Oh, hey, gonna take a little break here from playing WrestleMania 2000 on the N64. We've been doing this a long time. Our buying guides have been some of the most successful videos that we have ever done, dating all the way back. I think the first one came out in July of 2020.
Yes, so over 4 years ago.
Yeah. So welcome to the Nintendo buying guides. We figured for all the new folks, the old folks, and everybody in between, it might be fun to have all these in one place, and you can just chip away. You can just listen if you want to. It's going to be interesting for us to go through this again because maybe opinions have changed.
Oh, yeah, they probably have.
We've changed. It's been a long time. It's 2024. But here are all of our Nintendo buying guides in one place.
Yes, home consoles, NES, Super Nintendo, GameCube, Wii, Wii U, and Switch. Sit back, pour yourself a drink if you care to, and enjoy the Nintendo buying guides.
It may be the most addictive toy in history, and it's definitely the hottest thing this Christmas. Nintendo video games. They first arrived from Japan 3 years ago, and now millions of American kids are hooked and mesmerized. When they do stop to talk, it's in a language only they understand.
Finally tonight, the latest video game craze to sweep the United States and Japan. It's called Nintendo.
It's just like a culture.
And Nintendo addicts have plenty of gadgets to fill their video appetite, including cereal, clothes, and scores of other trinkets. It's a fad that at this point knows no limit.
So far, Nintendo has sold more than 50 million game cartridges. By the end of this year, they hope to have their system in 1 out of every 8 American homes.
What is it about these games that reduce men, women, children, even this intelligent good evening reporter to guttural noisemakers, babbling incoherently and carrying on conversations with absolutely nobody for hours on end?
Nintendo is, well, almost the most fun a kid can have.
We probably all remember Pong. That was probably the first video game that you could play at home. Well, we have come a long way in the last 15 years since that game came out. Now there are high-tech graphics and greater challenges for the video game aficionado.
All this is beyond me. I had trouble with Lincoln Logs. Remember Lincoln Logs? I mean, that was it for me. Kids and fantasy.
This is Pat Contra, known as the NES Punk, and you are watching Gaming Off the Grid. Right now you're on the grid watching on YouTube, though, so you have power and electricity.
The Nintendo Entertainment System. It's like, where do you even begin? We've been looking forward to filming this one for a while. We've been doing these buying guides. We're like, let's take it back to square one, where we both got our start.
The console that I first played, the console that you first played, the console that is like 30 years old, 35 years old.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's still relevant today in 2021. I still play it daily. I love the NES so much.
Yeah, and this one's going to be kind of a little bit of a unique twist on this buying guide series we've been doing, is we're going to kind of more of a retrospective, kind of talk about the history of the console. We're actually going to reveal our top 10 NES games for the first time ever.
First time ever.
In this episode. And we're going to talk about, you know, what it's like to maybe jump in if you're a new gamer. So I think there's some value for the history and stuff for current collectors and NES fans. But if you're new looking to get into it, where do I begin? How do I play these games? What's the best way to play these games? And as we get ready to jump into all of that, I think let's take a look at the background of the Nintendo. entertainment
Yeah,
system.
so the NES launched in 1985 in test markets.
Ish, yeah.
So the history of the NES is kind of like all over the board. It's really weird. Like
Pricing,
dates.
Yeah.
There's nothing consistent.
Yeah.
So we just picked a number and a date, and that's what we're going
Yeah.
with. So it launched October 18th, 1985 in test markets, and it came out in 86 nationwide,
Yeah.
which was super cool.
Yeah, it is a really convoluted launch for the console. You know, as far as pricing goes, looking up MSRPs, we see anywhere from $89.99 all the way to like $149.99 for the core console. But the core console, the control deck, is what was released initially.
In just 3 years, they've sold more than 11 million hardware units at about $100 each.
The sales of the NES is unique to me because worldwide sold 62 million units, only 34 million in the United States. Now, for the time, that's a ton.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But it's weird to me that number's not higher because, you know, you weren't born until 94. I was born in 86, so I was like right in the heart of it. And I don't know of a household that had kids around my age that did not have an NES. It seems like everybody had one.
Everyone had one, which is crazy because that number is so low compared to like PS4 and stuff like that. Like, that's so weird. But back in the day, that was a lot.
Yeah, you know, and you think about like the Switch. I mean, it's like 3 times that number of sales already, and it's still rolling. So it is a lower number in the U.S. anyway than I would have imagined. We've looked at this data before, but it always kind of stands out to me. But that is a large number when you consider that it was bringing the video game market out of a major recession where things kind of hit the floor basically, and Nintendo didn't even know is this thing gonna work, so they had to make it almost look like an appliance type of deal.
They kind of made it look so then people didn't know what it was, and then they bought it.
Yeah,
it was very weird, and the original look of the NES does look very weird.
Yeah,
like
the toaster model, you know, it definitely, they took a different form factor than you know, they did in Japan with the Famicom and things like that. But I think it is credited though, video games as we know it would probably be a little different if the NES hadn't arrived and did what it did there in the mid to late 80s. It was on fire.
Now you're playing with power.
You know, memories behind the NES, the nostalgic factor is so high.
It's so high.
Obviously, first console I ever played, and I remember playing it as far back as when I was 4 years old.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I think I was probably 4 or 5 the first time I played my NES too, and it's just, ever since I've known video games, I've known about the NES. Like, it started my whole video game love.
Yeah.
The NES.
And it's wild that that's where you started as well, because again, being born in 94, you were probably like 97, 98 when you started gaming.
Maybe 99.
But your mom still had that NES.
She still had it.
around.
She didn't play it. It was in the cupboard, and I pulled it out, and I remember playing the first Mario Bros, and I was like, this is so cool. It was so simple, running and jumping. That's all it was, but I was in love with that.
That's awesome. So we're going to look at some console variants as we discussed. You know, if you were to purchase one in 2001, and before you run off to the comment sections and say, well, I don't need an NES. I can play through emulation. I can play on my RetroPie. I can play on my cell phone. I can play games on my mom's Meat Wallet. We know. We'll cover those other things later on down the line. But we're going to talk about the core stuff that was actually released by Nintendo.
Yes.
And then we'll move on to modern times and in ways that you can play these games.
There's so many console variants for the NES. So many pack-ins and bundles and all these different boxes. We have 3 of them in the game room. That's so many.
Yeah, and the console for the most part until 93 remained the same as far as form factor. Now, if you open them up, there were some nuances that got changed here and there. But for what you see, the visual, it's pretty much the same thing. You had the core deck in 85, 86. You know, you also had the core deck with the bundle. It had Super Mario Brothers bundled with it. Then I think everybody remembers that deluxe set with Rob the Robot, and that was the humdinger, retailing anywhere from $200 to $250 when that came out.
I love the way that box looks, though. That box is so beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, the pricing, guys, we're going to be a little all over the board because go look it up yourself. It's all over the place. The power set came out. I think a lot of people remember the pad, the power pad, whether you loved it or hated it. I think it's one of those nostalgic things that we remember. You know,
I've never used a power pad, to be honest.
Yeah,
and I don't want.
Yeah, I have. I didn't own one though. I had a neighbor that did have one, and I remember playing like track and field and thinking it was cool at the time, but it kind of was shitty at the same time. The action set.
Ooh, the action set. We have that in the game room. That's so cool. It came with the Zapper and Mario Duck Hunt combo.
Yeah, and there's 2 variants of that as well. There's a gray Zapper variant and an orange Zapper.
Orange Zapper variant, which growing up I only knew about the orange Zapper.
Yeah, in the comment section below, tell us, what is your Zapper? Do you roll with the gray or do you roll with the orange?
I'm hashtag Team Orange, baby.
I'm Team Gray. That's what I had. I remember the first time I seen an orange one, I was like, what the is this thing? Duff. Is it?
Duff.
It's orange? Duffu. But anyways, the action set, I think a lot of people got their hands on that. One that I've never seen in person is the sports set.
The sports set, I've never seen it in person either, but it's cool because it came with 4 controllers and the multi-tab or whatever, you know?
Yeah, we'll talk about this bad boy and the accessories, but the old NES satellite.
It's
pretty
cool, but
not a large application.
I feel like that was like the least sold out of all the sets.
Yeah, I don't know for sure on that, but the challenge set, we got that one sitting right here. Came with Mario 3.
Oh, beautiful.
This was actually a Christmas morning of my brother and I's because our NES was really bad. Like, you guys know how it was growing up with the NES, right? You blow in the games. And then ours was that weird thing, maybe you guys did this, where you had to push the game down and then put a game over the top of it to hold it down. Further than, whatever. Now I would know how to fix that, but back then, that's just what you did. And so when we got this challenge, it was like, oh, a new Nintendo.
All I can think of is the guy in the library, Mario Puzi.
I just have such nostalgia for this, because my brother was old enough to be coherent at this time. I think we got it in like 92 or 93, so it was kind of cool to pick up. And then the top loader arrived in 93, which is like a year or two after the Super Nintendo came out.
Yes, the top loader is such a cool looking console, and they just went simple with it. Boom, top loader.
Yeah, the one thing with the top loader is the outputs. If you bring that up here, they did not offer out of the box anyways AV out.
Yeah.
So it just went to RF. So this is a very streamlined model. The reliability factor is higher to a certain degree. So some of these, you can see the pin lines kind of on the screen when you play it. We don't have that issue with ours. We also just played on an old CRT. But this was the budget model, but I know a lot of hardcore folks will mod these and get these because they tend to be, as far as just reading the cartridge, more reliable because you're not dealing with the moving parts.
No, it's just straight in.
It's more of just straight piping like you were with the Super Nintendo or N64.
Or N64, yeah. It's very similar to the N64.
Yeah.
Even though that came out way later. And what's really cool about the top loader is it introduced the dog bone controller, which I love the regular NES rectangle controller, but something about the dog bone, I love the way it curls.
Yeah. It's weird because I'm with you. I love the way it feels, but I never play with it.
Yeah,
because
I'm so nostalgic for the rectangle,
I'm just
even though
used
it
to
digs into your hands.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, man, I've been romping and stomping with the standard, so I've never loved the angular part of the buttons. Had the B and A been straight across, but I just have that. I just like rock over to those, and I'm so used to it. But I know a lot of people love that controller.
The dog bone is beautiful.
Yeah.
Now let's jump into NES accessories, and there is so many of them. So we've already kind of talked about that with the controller. That's like the basic accessory. You got the rectangle one and the dog bone. Another cool thing about the dog bone is the buttons A and B curve up instead of curve down on the rectangle.
Yeah, so they're convexed as opposed to concave, which is another reason that it kind of notches on my badge. I know a lot of people love the controller, and that is kind of the maybe holy grail, if you will. It's more expensive to get one of those. But one thing that's awesome about both controllers is they literally will be around as long as Twinkies.
Where's the fucking Twinkies?
They're so easy to fix. They're virtually indestructible. When you find one in the wild, you got about a 90% or above chance that controller is going to work, or it just needs a simple cleaning and a repad.
And then boom.
You can't kill the damn things, which is awesome because we used to beat the shit out of them.
Same thing kind of goes with the console. Usually, if it doesn't work, it's just the pins, and then you can boil the pins, and you can usually bring a console back to life.
Pretty easy. We just did one.
Yeah, we just did it this morning.
So the NES Advantage. I think this is a very cool accessory that is actually applicable. Like some of the accessories we'll talk about are just kind of like novelty, if you will. But this is really awesome. I like playing games with this, especially shooters.
Yeah,
and like beat 'em ups, because it kind of feels like
an arcade, dude. It's so nice.
Yeah, and to be honest, we don't bust ours out as much as we should, but we do have the old NES Advantage, and it's pretty cool. Cowabunga! And while we're on controllers, I mean, this NES Max, does anybody like this thing?
I've never played with it.
This little limp dick fucking wannabe joystick thing, like, I've used it, never loved it. It just feels like, you just feel it.
I will say, for the time, so innovative.
Yeah.
But, wow.
It's just,
This is like you're playing air hockey.
Yeah.
Right now. Like, it's just floating everywhere.
I have never loved it, so I don't think that one's a very practical accessory.
No, but innovative.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Practical, though. Bing, bang, boom. As I grabbed the orange zapper after I said the gray zapper was my thing. But anyway, here's the orange zapper. Obviously, we already said it came in gray. Practical in 2021. Depends on what type of display you're playing on.
Yes.
You may or may not know, this does not work on modern consoles. It interacts with the CRT and the flash ability of that type of technology. So if you're trying to use this on the old Samsung or LG flat panel TV in your living room, you ain't gonna be killing any ducks, and old doggy boy's gonna be laughing at you.
And I know someone in the comments is like, well, I can actually play it because I bought this little thing that converts it into this little thing.
Yeah.
We know. So don't even
settle down.
So don't even go there.
Yeah.
We're talking about OG stuff.
Yeah. So, but the typical person's not gonna pick that up and know what the hell to do when they get it, because they're like, oh, why doesn't it work on my TV? The Power Glove? You guys remember the Power Glove?
God, dude.
We actually sold one recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Power Glove, in theory, is so cool. Like, you're like, you feel like a badass, especially if you watch the movie The Wizard. Like, it's such a cool thing, but then when you try using it,
it's
good luck. It sucks.
I can't imagine that. Maybe it's just because the time. Was it always that shitty? Like, how did they release that? Because Nintendo was pretty dialed in, and I don't think, was it a collab with Tiger, maybe? Something to that effect. So maybe their quality control wasn't super heavily involved. From a cosmetic standpoint, anybody looks like a badass with a Power Glove on.
It looks so cool.
It's hard to not put one on and just be like...
You just feel stronger with it on. And speaking of another...
Not practical. Yeah.
Speaking of another thing that was not practical, we've already kind of mentioned that. That's the Power Pad.
Yeah.
Very just weird.
Yeah.
But, dude, Nintendo in this era, they're just trying a lot of new things, and it's cool.
Yeah, it is
They're
cool.
seeing what stuck and what didn't, and a lot of them didn't.
They had us in the palm of their hands. The NES Satellite and NES 4-Score was their multi-tap variants. The Satellite was a wireless model. You plug this in, I don't know if you can see it there, but it goes into both controller ports, 4 controller ports here. And it's pretty cool, but there's not a ton of 4-player NES games.
No.
So, like, how practical is this to own? If you have those games and really want to play them, but for the most part, you're not going to use it a ton.
It's so innovative, though, because it's wireless controller gaming, technically.
Yeah.
With that thing, which is so cool. Because
you have this sitting right beside you.
You can kind of get away from the TV instead of sitting on the floor with your 4 buddies. Like, that's...
pretty cool.
Very innovative, but...
And then the 4-Score, I think is what it was called, is the same deal, but it's a wired version.
Yeah, plug-in.
Game Genie, who doesn't remember that?
With Game Genie, I decide how many lives I get.
You're not going to be able to, there are ways to emulate that aspect, but that feeling back in the day of like, oh, I'm a badass now, I can use a Game Genie.
That wasn't published by Nintendo.
No.
It was a third party,
Yeah.
but
it's cool.
It's very cool.
It is. And back when you were a kid and you're like, infinite lives? Oh my god. So it was pretty awesome. I think most people know of the Game Genie.
Will you be the one to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot, batteries not included.
Dude, our dumbasses almost forgot about Rob the Robot.
How could we forget about Rob the Robot? What an iconic NES accessory that I've never used.
I've never had. I never had one growing up. I did know someone that had the box with the Rob the Robot, like, the NES box for it, but I don't know whatever happened to the robot. So I just know of him through the lore of NES.
And is it even... What does he do?
We're gonna find out at some point, because we will have a Rob the Robot, and we're gonna put him on the shelf right behind you, so he can keep an eye on your behavior, dude.
Oh god.
Dude, we forgot the cleaning kit as well, just in case you need to wash your ass, or your NES, or in your games. It was like, so you don't blow in the shit. You're supposed to use the cleaning kit.
I never knew the cleaning kit existed because I blew in my games so much. Probably till I was like 16, I was blowing in my games.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if my parents just cared enough or what, but we always had one, and now we've got a couple CIB ones in the collection. They're kind of cool to have. And if you kind of want to simulate that old cartridge cleaning swabby type deal that was in the cleaning kit, 1-Up cards. It's a modern take on it, and they're actually, I think, better than what those NES swipers were.
The quality's a lot better, and they work a lot better than blowing in your games, let me tell you that.
So that's some of the accessories, console variants, things you could be out there looking for. Now, all those different console variants, I don't know if console variants is the operative word, because the core console is the same for the most part. It's just the way they were packaged. And if you're looking to get an NES and you've got no nostalgia for any of those sets, it really doesn't matter probably.
No, you can probably just buy one and lose. You're not going to buy it in box.
But there's something about if you did, in the era, you may want to hone in on getting the one that you got for Christmas or something, because it just feels kind of cool.
In the box, I love all the box arts. So now, let's move into games, and we're going to do this kind of different than our other buying guides, because we're going to reveal our top 10 NES games of all time for the first time.
Yeah, never have dug too deep into this, and we're going to reveal our top 10 as games you might want to pick up, and we'll also include the charting price for a loose copy of these games, because the NES is not crazy expensive in most cases, and I think a lot of people see these stories of, oh, Super Mario Bros. Sold for $1 bazillion, and it's
Power Blade 2.
Yeah, there are some anomalies, but it's the market.
Stadium events.
The market has mellowed, I would say, or at least settled. And so yeah, let's jump in to number 10. Yeah, I mean, we get it. It's Doki Doki Panic reskinned for North American markets, but that doesn't change the fact that it is our Super Mario Bros. 2.
Dude, Super Mario Bros. 2 is so much different than the first Mario Bros. But it has a charm, and the way it plays, and there's 4 characters you can pick for every level. One thing that I loved Mario Bros. 2, but one thing that pissed me off the first time I beat it was that it's not real. The game is a dream. So spoiler alert, if you haven't beat it yet, the game's not real. But also, it doesn't make sense because it's a video game. Like, why do I get upset by that?
I don't know.
It's not real no matter what.
Yeah, but even though it wasn't born as a Super Mario game, I still consider it a Mario game.
Oh, yeah.
And you can just take that to the bank.
It's so good. Game. Now let's move on to number 9. The Legend of Zelda, the OG.
One of the first games I had growing up, which I was pretty limited on games that I had. I think for the most part I had 5 or 6 games, and this was one of them. And I remember my mom was really into this game, and so I got to watch her play it a lot. And then as I got a little bit older and could kind of understand, my cousin and I played the hell out of this game, and it was up there with one of the first hard games that I ever beat.
I've only dabbled with Legend of Zelda, but it's kind of overwhelming. They just throw you in, and you're like, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? And what's really cool about Legend of Zelda is, isn't there a second quest? So if you beat it, it's different the second playthrough?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So there is some replayability there.
Which is pretty cool.
Awesome game. Castlevania. I think 3 is probably better than the original, but the original's on here for a freaking reason.
The original it's such a cool game. Yes, there's frustrating parts with jumping and Medusa heads and all that stuff. But what a staple, Konami at its finest. Castlevania, Simon Belmont.
I mean, and who doesn't want to just go after Dracula? And you have a whip! You have a freaking whip.
It's such a sweet game. All the hidden things in the bricks and stuff. Oh, it's awesome.
Contra, number 7.
Yes. So we were debating whether or not to put Super C or Contra, but we went with the original just because it started it all. And it's a badass game. The first Contra.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I played it, I could barely get through level 1.
Yep.
It's hard, dude.
Yeah,
it is hard.
And now we're pretty damn good at it.
Yeah.
Super C, I think, is probably, to your point, probably the better game, but there's something about the original Contra. There's just something about it. It's amazing. And now it's time for number 6. Sunsoft, Batman. Enough said. Michael Keaton is my Batman, and I rented the shit out of this game as a kid, and it's one of those games I'm very sad to say I still have not beat.
Because it's hard. Dude, it is a hard game. The wall jump mechanic, all the different weapons or tools you have. This game is so awesome. The soundtrack is incredible. I love the art style, and I'm a huge fan of Batman, so it's
Yeah, I've been so close to beating it. I think not all that long ago. I was working on it really hard about 6 months ago, and I got to freaking Joker's pansy ass, and I got so pissed that I'm like, I gotta get away from this game for a little bit. I just haven't went back. But I love that game. Super Mario Brothers.
Super Mario Bros. The OG, so one of the first video games, if not the first video game I ever played. So I will always have huge nostalgia for this. I play this game probably once a week. I play it I just try and speedrun it, and most of the time I die. So then if I die once when I'm playing it, I'll just shut it off. I just want to no death run it. I've done it a few times, but it's such a staple, man. It's a beautiful, awesome game.
It's a great game, and it's one of those games that's odd to me. There's some people out there that kind of shit on the game, and it's an amazing game, still to this day.
Why would people shit on it?
Just people like to, have hot takes. But Super Mario Brothers is badass, and it's number 5 on our list.
So speaking of hot takes, this game is so much better than Tetris, and that's Dr. Mario. I've said that 1,000 times. I just love this game so much. I play this game almost daily. It's just a perfect game. Chill is one of the best video game songs ever made. So good. I love puzzle games so much, and I just zone out when I play it. It's so simple. It's so easy to a certain extent, but I love Dr. Mario. I love him.
And probably my favorite NES game of all time. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Yep.
I just love it. It's the game that I'm the best at of any game, probably. Super Mario Bros. Is up there, but Punch-Out. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
And if you've been following the channel for a while, you know we've been talking about that I've been training. I'm still training. I'm getting better. It's a hard freaking
I'll
game.
never forget first time I beat Tyson. I was like 7 or 8 years old. My dad didn't believe me. Oh, bullshit. Come downstairs, Dad. I'll freaking show you. And it took me a couple times, but I was able to replicate it. But the first time I ever beat him, I won by decision. It doesn't happen anymore. Now, he's always going down in that second round for the most part. Love that game.
Moving on to number 2. This is a co-op. Fantastic game.
And it's climbing the ranks for us.
Oh, dude, it just keeps...
yeah.
We talk about this game ad nauseum on the channel, and that is Jackal. How many Konami games are on this list? A lot of them.
Yeah, well, I think that's 3 so far. 3, yeah.
This game is amazing. I love it so freaking much. It's just a tank, jeep, shooter. It's awesome.
Yeah, the game really thrives co-op. I've always liked the game, but I have a newfound appreciation for it with us playing it co-op. It's great. I used to rent it all the time, but my brother was young enough that he couldn't really help me too much, so it was kind of like, oh, this game's cool. I like it. But when you play with someone else who knows what's going on, it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome game. And number 1, let's just get it out there. I think everybody probably saw this one coming.
Mario Bros. 3.
Yep.
Oh, so... Huge fan of the Mario series. We have 1 and 2, and now 3 on our top 10 list. They're amazing. 3 is like the perfection of Mario 1, and then a little bit of Mario 2 because it's way different. But the perfection of the Mario games.
Yeah.
All the different power-ups, the overview map. It's a beautiful freaking game.
It's perfection.
And
as much as you want to be cool and say, hey, that's not our number 1 game. We got to do something different. If you do, then you're probably just doing it to try to be cool. I mean, because it's one of the best games ever made.
And it's still so hard.
Yeah.
We've beaten it multiple times, but it still is a struggle to beat. It's a tough game.
Yeah, I think at one point, I want to say we were damn close to no death running it, or we did no death run it. I can't remember exactly. It's on the channel.
World 8 is it gets freaking tough. And I just want to throw in an honorable mention real quick, because I'm shocked it didn't make our list, but we made our list really quick, and that's Gradius.
Yeah.
I don't know how it didn't make our list.
It was good. Ninja Gaiden was close.
Ninja Gaiden was up there, but Gradius, that's the game that made me fall in love with shmups.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful game, the music, and that's another Konami game.
Yeah. Hey.
They were on fire back in the day.
Getting a lot of love. But anyway, it's a quick snapshot of our top 10, and who knows, this will change. We might repackage that into a different video at some point, but we figured let's just throw it in here, because if we did games we recommend, we could go on and on forever. Yeah. So we figured let's do our top 10. So now you've got the consoles, you got the accessories, you got the games. Now it's time to talk about the current market and what the future maybe holds for the NES. The market, I feel like, as a collector, somebody who buys and resells video games, I'm not going to say for a living, but I could do it for a living, and I game hunt every single day of every single week, running our eBay store. The market's settled. The market has settled. It's not as volatile as it was, game prices, there are so many good games at good prices.
Yes.
You can get Ninja Turtles for under $10. You can get so many good NES games for under $10.
I think Jackal's under $10.
And I think that pocket of nostalgia has kind of passed the NES by, and now it's really landing in the N64 GameCube realm for Nintendo, that is. I'm sensing that. So I don't think if you're wanting to get in on original hardware, I don't think you should be scared of it.
No.
It's very affordable. You could literally get a console, probably $60-$70, and I'm talking like eBay prices, like not what you could maybe find one at a garage sale.
Oh, we find them at garage sales all the time with bundles and games way cheaper than that.
Yeah, we just got a bundle literally from a guy that works at a pawn shop who's like, hey man, I got some stuff you may be interested in. I just want $100. And it was an NES, some games, a GameCube, and some games. And I mean, if you distill all that down of what value is in this, we probably got the NES for like $20.
Yeah, with games and stuff.
Yeah.
So that is awesome. I feel like the market's at a point where it's not going to get any lower, but I feel like it's not going to start rising.
That's a good point.
It's it's kind of plateaued and it's going to stay there. Obviously, there's still some games that are going to keep going up in value. Like we keep mentioning Power Blade 2.
Yeah, Little Samson.
Those games will keep going up in value because they're just rare and they're smaller prints. But for the common games like your Marios, your Duck Hunts, your Dr. Marios, a lot of Mario there. But you can find those everywhere. Well, we found freaking NES games. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but we found NES games at a thrift store, a month ago?
No, like 2-3 days ago, man. It's Salvation Army. I got that whole bag of them.
I was thinking of that other lot.
Oh, yeah.
That was a couple months ago. Yeah. It doesn't happen every day, but they're out there and at garage sales.
Well, and you
super
got
cheap.
Dr. Mario recently CIB that was like $22 or something.
Complete in box, which is beautiful. It's right there.
Very affordable. You can get in, especially a lot of the games in the list. And as you've seen that list go and saw the charting prices, it might have surprised you. There are some ones in there that are a little more, but a lot of them are pretty dang affordable. So if you're just wanting to play the games, you have tons of options in 2021. Typically from us, you're going to get the point of view of folks who want to collect and play original hardware, because that's what we do. That's what we prefer. That doesn't mean it's there's no right or wrong answer.
There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat.
So original hardware, pros. You've got the accessories at your disposal.
Yes.
If you play on a CRT TV, you reduce input lag.
Play with the zapper,
playing the games in their original state. But that might not be for everyone. If you don't want to have a CRT around, if you want to play on, HD displays, things like that, there's a multitude of clone consoles. You got your Hyperkin stuff, you got your Retron 5, you got the
Classic 2 HD, which is what we have, and that thing's super cool.
So many of them that we can't mention them all. But there are tons of clone consoles that actually play original cartridges, but then can also upscale to HD. So if that suits your fancy, you've got that option. Emulation.
Yes.
The NES Classic came out, which is really cool. I think, that it really showed the love for this console all these years later. Now, it was very hard to get, but you can get into one of these for about $100 anymore. And this is Nintendo's version of emulation. Get, 20, 30 pack-in games.
And it's just a snapshot of, the greatest hits from Nintendo, which we have them, and it's so cool. But what's weird is, if you aren't a huge gamer, I know a lot of people that had no idea about the NES Mini.
Yeah. Well, it was so hard to get.
It was so hard to get, because the generation above me, my parents and all them stuff, they grew up on the NES, and they had no idea the NES Mini was a thing, and I feel like if they would have known about it, they probably would have bought it.
Yeah.
So, it could be because just gamers bought it up so quick, and it didn't sit on store shelves.
Yeah.
But that's a really sweet option.
HDMI ready and pretty close to original controllers. I hesitate to say they're original controllers because they're a little different. The D-pad is not the same.
It's shallower.
It is, and it's a little more dodgy. It's not as precise as the original NES controller. But then within the world of emulation, you've got RetroPies. You can put these ROMs on your phone. You can mod so many different consoles to play NES games. The Wii, the Wii U, even the GameCube, all these different options of how you can emulate NES games. If you don't care to play with an original controller or don't care to, play the original stuff.
Now, let's say you have an NES, but you don't want to go out and buy a ton of games. You don't want to store a ton of cartridges. Multi-cards. It's a great way to emulate the games. if you're using original hardware or if you're using a clone console.
Yeah.
It's a great way to do that. We got ours on Etsy. They're so nice. And
100 games on that, and we use that when we go on the road.
On the road. I mean,
and in the garage.
Obviously, the games are not going to play the best, and there's going to be some input lag on some of them. But if you're just playing for fun, that stuff doesn't matter, and it's a good, cheap way to get into it for just one card if you don't want to have a whole shelf.
And then Nintendo's proprietary ways to emulate some of these games. You know, the Nintendo Switch has the NES app.
They've done a fantastic job of bringing the NES to the Switch with the app, and monthly they add new games. So it's just never ending, and it's free if you have a Switch Online membership, which I think is like super cheap.
$20 a year or something like that. And then, you know, if you still have a Wii U laying around, there's a ton of NES games that you can buy individually to play on the Wii U. Wii U is also hackable. You can also mod it and install those games. But those are some ways, again, through Nintendo that, I don't know if you want to say it's illegal, whatever your view on emulation is, but those are proprietary ways through Nintendo to get access to those games. And then there's been so many like re-releases. You know, you have ways to access the games on, like, I think of like the NES Remix stuff.
Oh, yes.
But I also think about like the classic NES games that were released on the Game Boy Advanced.
Ooh, yeah.
And you got a ton of those. So you're still playing the games, but it maybe isn't on an NES. It's a lot to digest.
Yes. That's why I love the NES so much is you can play it no matter how you play video games.
Yeah.
You can find a way to play the games, and that's what gaming is all about. It's just finding a way to play the games no matter how, if your original hardware or your emulation, who cares? As long as you're playing the amazing
and having
games.
fun. Yeah. So it just depends on how you game. Again, for us, we're original hardware junkies for the most part. Now, for convenience, when we're traveling, things like that, we will emulate.
Yes.
But that may not matter to you. The thing that matters to us and the hardcore crowd is input lag.
Yes.
There are ways to mitigate it through emulation, but to this very day, I have not had anybody put a version of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out through any emulation, all the bells and whistles that you can spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to try dialing a game in, where I can beat Mike Tyson as consistently through that method as I can on original hardware.
Yes.
And it's never been shown to me. I've had people say, "Oh, it's close," and you play it, and it's like, yeah, it is.
It is close, but
it's not there.
It's impossible.
So if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty on some hard games, you know, your Contras, and wanting to get into like good speed runs and things like that, or games like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which you just damn near can't beat Tyson when there's lag. That's where the benefit of original hardware comes in. But that is not trying to be an elitist. It's just telling you the way it is.
And that's a very niche group of people, group of gamers that want to speed run or expert. If you're just a casual gamer and want to play your old games that you remember playing as a kid,
fire up your Switch.
Fire up the Switch. Fire up emulation. Get a multi-cart. Like, there's so many ways to do it on the cheap, and I love how the NES is still alive and thriving.
It's so accessible.
35 years later.
In 2021. One of the most accessible consoles that there is.
It revolutionized the gaming market in 85, 86, and it still is important.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
I play it every day.
Yeah, we love ourselves some NES. And I think if you clicked on this video, you probably do too. But anyway, that's a look at kind of the market, the layout, the lay of the land of the Nintendo Entertainment System, and kind of a walkthrough, if you will, of the history of the console and all that good type of stuff. Beer.
Let's talk about this beer. This is Ferrari Backpack. This is a collaboration beer between Toppling Goliath and Lua Brewing Company. This is a double IPA with 5 or 6 different types of hops. The can art's so cool. It's like holographic.
Yeah.
I don't know what Ferrari Backpack means. It kind of looks like someone's hitchhiking.
Yeah.
It's mine's almost gone.
Yeah, so, and Iowa Brewery, both of the breweries in this collaboration are Iowa breweries, so right in our backyard here.
Yes. What do you think of it?
I like it. I like it a lot. It's not the best IPA that Toppling Glass ever had, but it's really damn good.
This is such an easy drinker. It's smooth. It's got good hop taste, but not aggressive hop taste. This is just a really good, simple double IPA.
Yeah.
I'm just flying through it. It's so good.
It's really good. I would say probably an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 if we were to rate it. But anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed. We were really looking forward to filming this episode and kind of a retrospective and a buying guide for the NES in 2021. There's no right or wrong answer. The games are super accessible. You've got to read your own mail. How do you like to game? How do you want it to feel? For us, to me, There's nothing that strokes those nostalgic strings more than firing up a CRT and an old school NES and sitting on the freaking floor and playing some Nintendo games.
Just like I was a kid.
I also know the other ways, and I do play those games the other ways as well. So there's no right or wrong answer, but hopefully this gave you some information to maybe navigate those waters if you're new to looking to collect for the NES in 2021. We always appreciate you tuning in and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Off the Grid. The Nintendo Entertainment System. Where to begin? We've been looking...
And while we were talking, Mom was watching all this warily.
Gets their mind off school when they first come home from school, but then it gets their mind totally off school. So we had to take it away for a while because homework wasn't getting done, bedtime got pushed aside.
What do you mean take it away for a while?
I disassembled it and put it in the back of a closet for a while.
All right, try this beer.
Yep, happy breakfast.
This is back to like the old school days where we film in the mornings. It's been a little while.
Oh yeah.
Now I know how you're spending the holidays, watching
right.
Nintendo.
Playing Nintendo.
Playing Nintendo. Good job. Now on to a much more serious report.
Introducing the next generation from Nintendo. New Super Mario World. Created especially for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
It was peaceful in the Mushroom Kingdom.
So that's the new Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
What about it?
They say it has 16-bit technology, whatever that means.
Oh, I see. What else do they say?
That it has 3D graphics and digital stereo sound, and that Super Mario World is included.
Okay, we'll get it for them.
Those are good. Now you're playing with power. Superpower.
Tubers and trolls, Chris here with Splash Gaming, one of the OG members of the Brew Crew with you, and you're watching my buddies Robert and Wes live out their nerd fantasies, drinking beer and playing games at Gaming Off the Grid.
Parents around the globe were confused. Why do you need this new game console? What do you mean it doesn't play the old games that we bought you for your regular Nintendo? The Super Nintendo arrived in August of 1991, and it raised the bar.
It took what Nintendo did with the NES and made it super.
Yeah, I mean,
it's in the name.
Yeah, 16-bit, and you know, it was just a graphical marvel at the time. I remember the first time I seen one. Now, I did not get a Super Nintendo till way late. I remember seeing it for the first time and just being like, wow.
What? Yeah, the huge leap in graphics. The controller added 2 more buttons and shoulder buttons.
Yeah.
I did not play a Super Nintendo growing up. I didn't play one until I was an adult, which is crazy, but I was way past that. Like, it went for me NES and 64.
Yeah,
because I was just way young.
Yeah, so came out, again, August of 1991, retailed at $199.99, and I believe Super Mario World was packed in. So, pricing-wise, you know, fairly close to the NES, which there's more concrete data on pricing for the Super Nintendo than there is on the NES. The NES is kind of all over the board. But, you know, could they replicate the success of the NES? And, you know, from a commercial standpoint, they didn't quite get there. 49 million units sold worldwide, only 23 million of those in North America, which seems fairly low when I think back to the Super Nintendo and how popular it appeared to be, at least in my neck of the woods.
I was just way too young when it came out. I wasn't even born yet when it came out.
Yeah.
And my mom didn't have one, so I didn't know about it just because I wasn't born in the era.
And no pun intended, but it still was super successful, as it was the console leader of the generation. Nostalgic and memories, you know, I know you don't have a ton of nostalgia for it, but
I do know that this generation and this era, though, was the generation of the console wars.
Yeah.
Genesis versus Super Nintendo. Which one's better? Who cares?
It's still a playground fight to this day, probably. I mean, you get, a couple 30-somethings around and start throwing this thing out there after a few beers have been had, and, there could be some fist fights over this thing. My nostalgia for it is not quite as thick and doesn't run as deep as the NES, because I did not own a Super Nintendo until I believe it was 98 or 99 when I got one, and it was for a Christmas that I asked for an N64.
And you got the Super.
Yeah, which it was a weird thing. You would think that I would have been let down, but I was still really freaking happy to get it. And I got the Donkey Kong Country console bundle.
That one's sweet.
But the reason I say my nostalgia doesn't run as deep is I believe it was that very next Christmas that I did in fact get the N64. So
you only had it for a year.
Yeah, so my memories are more going to my neighbor's house and playing it, and he had amazing games, and I had 2 other friends that had Super Nintendo, so it was always a big deal to go over to their house. And did you guys ever have friends, or maybe you did, where they had something that, like, they'd had for a long time, so it wasn't as cool to them, but that's all you wanted to do when you went over there?
you just used them for the video games you didn't have.
You're like, oh, let's play Super Nintendo. They're like, yeah, okay, because you're looking forward to it. To them, they have it all the time. But one game that I played just constantly back then with my friend Dylan was Turtles in Time. We played the hell out of that game.
Such a great game on the Super Nintendo.
And I had a lot more time in this era with the arcades because I was skating a lot and I was going to the arcade. Well, it was called Skate South, but they had arcade games there. So I was enamored with like Mortal Kombat and things like that, NBA Jam, and then you could play it on
at
the Super
home?
Nintendo. Yeah, and like Turtles in Time, so
and you were like,
it was really cool.
What?
And my memories of the Genesis are kind of the same way, as I had a friend who had that, so I didn't really have a dog in the fight at the time. I was just wanting to play the consoles when I could. But once I did get the game, obviously I got Donkey Kong Country and that pack in, and I got Super Mario Kart, and was just blown away. I'll never forget when I started playing Donkey Kong Country, and I still feel this way. The graphics blew me away.
Dude, they are still so beautiful.
Still blow me away. And I remember thinking, like, man, how could the N64 do this better? Like, this is the best thing I've ever seen, and I still feel like it's one of the best looking games ever made.
Well, and the soundtrack.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's such a good game.
Little aquatic ambience.
Oh my god, that song is amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't really have much nostalgia for the Super Nintendo since I didn't grow up playing it. I didn't know anyone that really had one. I didn't play it until I was an adult, but I still appreciate it, and there's so many amazing games. I still love it.
Yeah.
But not as much as the NES because I didn't grow up with it,
So if someone's looking to get one in 2021, which is kind of the whole premise of this series we do, but let's talk about the console variants. There's 2 core console variants, and yes, there are clone consoles and all that. We'll get there. Oh, we'll get there. But as far as original hardware, you've got the base model of the Super Nintendo, and you have got the Super Nintendo Junior, is what I call it.
Which is adorable.
Yeah, it is. And it was kind of again, similar to what they did with the top loader for the NES. It was a cheaper model that kind of came out when everyone was going for, like the N64, but you could get in on it on the cheap.
Super cheap.
Both are great options. This doesn't have any complaints out of me. I've always liked this. Ours works like a freaking charm.
Boom.
Except for a reset button doesn't work. I probably need to open it up and look into why that is.
But it fires up.
Yeah,
That's all that matters.
Yeah, and it's just a straight. I still prefer the look though of the original.
Yes.
But I did always love the purple and gray look of the North American version. I would die on a hill saying that version looks better than the PAL version, but I know people in that territory would probably do the same, but I've always loved the colorway. It's the reason for the colorway of our channel.
Yeah, purple.
It's all because of the Super Nintendo. But within that, if you're looking at like variations of console releases, I mean, we could go on forever.
We'll put a bunch on the screen right now.
Yeah.
There's so many of them, it's overwhelming how many there are.
It is, and the ones that stick out to me that I just remember seeing in the stores was the original that came with Super Mario World, the Donkey Kong Country version, which we have the box for both of those, the Super Nintendo Junior, but I also remember the Mario Paint one when that came out, because that was pretty cool. And then I remember the one that had the Super Game Boy packed in with it.
Oh, yes.
But then there's a bunch as collectors that I've seen through the years. You know, I know like Brian just got a Super Nintendo Junior, but I believe it had like the Zelda pack in with it, and I never remember seeing that.
There was so many that I feel like I keep discovering more console box variants in 2021 just because I'm diving deeper into it than I realized there was.
And I can't remember what con we were at, but I seen one that I want to say had like a Ken Griffey Jr. game with it. Is that a real thing, or am I making that up? But I feel like I've seen that, and I was like, what the fuck? And I seen it, and I was like, that's pretty cool. So there's a ton out there. But as far as what console you could get into, both relatively affordable, I think. I mean, some people might disagree with that, but
I mean, if you're going to eBay and want to buy it now, you might spend a little bit more money, but you still can find them at garage sales and thrift stores. Now, I will say that we find Super Nintendo consoles a lot less than NES consoles.
Yeah.
But they're still out there if you want boots on the ground, you know, looking for stuff.
Yeah, and as a whole, I think everything we're going to talk about in this episode is maybe a notch more expensive. Not maybe, it is a notch more expensive than it would be on the NES, which if you've been following, you've seen that video before you're seeing this video. So the barrier of entry is a little higher here. So let's talk about some of the accessories, and then we will jump into and reveal our top 10 Super Nintendo games of all time, ones that you should look for, and we'll display the prices for them as well.
Obviously, the first accessory we need to talk about is the controller. And I already mentioned it came with 4 buttons. It was an upgrade from the 2 buttons, and it includes shoulder pads.
R&L.
Which is so freaking sweet. And this is really cool because the North American version has convex.
I think it has both, right? So X and Y.
Oh yeah, and then A and B
are convex.
Convex, yeah.
And X and Y are concave.
And but then in the PAL regions, isn't it flipped?
No, they're all convexed on the PAL controller.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why.
That's a good question. I can understand.
I'm already confused, and I know what it is.
Yeah,
but why?
Well, and I can understand the color difference, but why did you fuck with the buttons, Nintendo? Like, I don't get it.
Well, I will say that the North American controller is the better controller.
Ooh,
no,
hot take.
I'm just kidding. I know we have a lot of people across the pond that watch it, and I just wanted to piss them off.
So. Yeah, no, I think it's all preference, but an amazing controller. As far as retro stuff goes, and this might ruffle some feathers too, but the Genesis controller has always, I can get used to the 3-button and 6-button layout, but my problem is, and it just could be because I was a Nintendo kid, I've always struggled a bit with the Genesis D-pad.
Yes.
On both variations of the controller. I've never liked D-pads that were all exposed as one solid piece.
Yeah, so then they do that so you can do your crooked shots and everything.
Yeah,
but
it's weird.
I don't feel as precise.
Because under the controller shell, all D-pads are one piece.
Yeah.
They're not individual buttons, but they've just always played different for me. That's just my thing. I've always loved the NES and SNES D-pads paramount to any other consoles.
And it could be because I didn't grow up with the Genesis, and I grew up a Nintendo kid, but the learning curve, I feel like, for the Genesis controller is a lot more than if I were to just jump into a Super Nintendo game. It's very confusing. Now, the more I play the Genesis as an adult, the more I'm like, okay, this makes sense, it's kind of cool, I like it. But for jumping in, first-time players, there is a learning curve for the Genesis. So this isn't a let's hate on the Genesis episode, but
it's kind of turned into that. But no, we love the Genesis.
Genesis versus Super Nintendo.
We collect the Genesis a ton, so it's no hate there. Another accessory that I think is a must own, especially if you're going original hardware. So we're going to talk about other ways to play these games at the back end of this episode. But the Super Game Boy at the time, offering backwards compatibility to play my freaking Game Boy games on the TV.
On the TV.
It was freaking huge, man.
That was revolutionary. It was so cool. It's basically like the Switch, but in the 90s. You could play your games on the go and then play them on the TV.
Yeah.
It's so cool how they did that. and they're just crossing. It's like, oh.
And then there were Game Boy games engineered specifically for the Super Game Boy. So when you'd play it on that, you'd have special borders, you'd have a little more color brought in. So cool, and it's an accessory that to this day we use quite a bit, which is strange because we have the Game Boy player as well on the GameCube.
Yeah.
But something about playing the Super Game Boy, and it's not even that expensive of an accessory.
No, it's not.
Which I would think it would be.
Yeah.
But it's awesome, and they're very dependable. Everyone we've ever found,
it just boom fires up immediately.
Resold. Where the hell is that damn thing? We have a cool custom case for us. Yeah, come here, little boy.
Look at that bad boy. He barely fits in it.
He barely fits in there, but come here, come out. Show us your undercarriage. There he is. I just love this. Like, look how cool. Does that not get the nostalgic blood flowing through the veins of the
plug it in, plug it in.
Oh yeah. Now you're playing with superpower, dude. Yeah, that gets me jacked up. Another accessory, which we're not going to get it down because we'll get B-roll because would just be a nightmare. We'd probably die of an avalanche. But we have the Super Scope, and really love that. And the scope is actually outside of the box, and that's loose. A fun story. But
that's a secret story.
Well, you have to meet us in person to hear that story. We have it CIB foam inserts, Super Scope, very cool accessory, but kind of a dog shit accessory.
I feel like this applies to a lot of the NES accessories and a lot of the Super Nintendo accessories. Is they released all these accessories that are cool, but in practicality, good luck.
It's like it's a cool toy, but it's not a cool gaming piece.
No,
and it should have been though.
How many kids got a Super Scope and just used it as they were pretending it was a gun?
Yeah,
probably
the majority of them. It looks really cool, and I love something about the nostalgia of it. You know, like it's still when I pick it up in Smash Bros, I feel like I'm the king of the world, dude. I'm like Super Scope, let's go. Love the Super Scope. But you might not want to go out and get one.
No.
Ours is in here to be a cool display piece. That's literally what it's good for.
And just for nostalgia.
Now, there was a decent light gun for Lethal Enforcers put out by Konami, and it was also on the Genesis, but I think it was called the Justifier, and it's a badass, like, revolver, Dirty Harry style light gun. I've only ever used it back in the day on the Super Nintendo a couple times, because my friend had it.
I've never seen one of those in person.
And then, well, we had the Genesis ones over here, though. Remember, Newland let us borrow those.
Yes.
And they worked pretty well.
But on the Super,
Yeah. So, pretty cool. I believe they're blue. That's at least the one that I've seen. I think there might be an orange or a red one because I think you could get a two-pack. But that's something we need to get at some point. We don't have that.
We will at one point.
I think a lot of people probably remember the Super Nintendo mouse. I just sold that Mario Paint a while back that I had found in the wild.
That's so cool because it's like, oh, your Super Nintendo is a gaming console and also a PC. Yeah. That's what they were like trying to do.
Yeah. And Mario Paint was badass.
It was. You could do so many things with it. Going back to it, it's like not the greatest, but for the time, it's Mario Paint. Way cool.
Yeah, it was
very
fun.
Innovative.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing, and it's an actual accessory for the Super Nintendo that does work very well, in my opinion. Now, finding one that's not all dicked up, that's another story. But if you get a good working one, it actually works pretty well. The SNES Super Advantage is their fight stick, which is a pretty damn good piece of equipment.
It's pretty good.
Street Fighter?
I love playing it with fighting games and shmups. Yeah. So, just like we said in our NES video.
Yeah, for sure. Game Genie, that was a big deal. We've got the Game Genie for the NES and the Super Nintendo. I don't know what it is about those that has me so nostalgic for them. We never use them.
No.
But they're badass to have.
Just the idea of being a kid and being able to, like, cheat.
Yeah.
You felt like you were like hacking the game. It was cool.
You freaking a lot of pumpkin eaters back in the day. Cheater, pumpkin eater. There was some other stuff. There was a multi-tap put out by Hudson Soft. I believe it was for the Bomberman games.
Ooh, okay. That makes sense. Four-player party.
You know, it's one of those that I've never played with, so I don't think it's a necessary accessory, but it's out there. And then there obviously is some really weird shit. Like they had that SNES exercise bike. Remember Kelsey from the MGR crew found one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's a piano for something. I've seen like videos, never seen one in person of like a military grade like M16. There was apparently some like exclusive underground military training games on the Super Nintendo that were private.
Whoa, the government's hiding stuff from us again?
Might have helped win us some wars. Just too soon?
There's hashtag too soon. There's so many. I feel like the 90s, especially, video game consoles or video game companies released all these crazy accessories.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think you know, we've talked about this before, and I can't even remember what episode we talked about this in, but companies were taking risks because they did not know what worked.
Yeah, true. So they were just
on the cusp of trying to be innovative and just throwing paint on the canvas. It was a really creative time. And as we've gotten on through time, they know what works, and it's created kind of a landscape of a formulaic approach to the video game industry. They know now what works.
Well,
so we don't get this crazy ass out of bounds stuff much.
I feel like that can apply to video games, movies, music.
Oh yeah.
Everything nowadays is this. I mean, obviously there's still stuff out there, but they know what works and makes money, so it's just cookie cutter now.
I think we talked about it in a look back episode.
Yeah, we did.
I think,
and we dove deep, and you kind of got angry.
Maybe I did, but I'm not angry today because we're talking about the Super Nintendo. So we did this in the NES episode, which is kind of a new thing we're doing in the series because we don't do a lot of like top 10, top 5. What do you? Because we just, I don't know. We will maybe someday, but nothing against them. We just never have. So we figured instead of telling you the games you should maybe go get, we're just going to talk about our top 10 favorite Super Nintendo games of all time. We'll put a little price charting bit in there so you can kind of see what they are for a loose copy. And we know price charting is not the most accurate place in the world, but it's at least a source of information.
And it gives you an idea. So let's jump into our top 10. We made this list so quick, so everyone's going to be like, how come you didn't talk about this game, this game, this game?
We shot it off the wrist
we
right
just shot
before
off
we
the
started
wrist,
filming.
and also, it's our list, so
Yeah.
who cares? Number 10. Thunder, Spirits. I've already mentioned we love our shmups.
Yeah.
This game is so sweet.
And if you're thinking Thunder Spirits isn't the best Super Nintendo shooter, I like UN Squadron. Well, we like UN Squadron too, but this game is the Thunder Force counterpart.
Yes.
On the Super Nintendo. So Thunder Force is, obviously everybody knows how good of a shooter series that is. Well, Thunder Spirits is actually an arcade port. I could be wrong. Thunder Force AC, BC, whatever.
It's kind of confusing.
Yeah, but it's in that universe. And it's an amazing game that people sleep on. So number 10 is a little bit of a nug. A hidden nug.
I love this game so much, and it's so simple. But I remember when I discovered it for the first time, and it was at MJC 2018, I believe, and that is Super Smash TV. Oh, I love just how simple, top-down, run-and-gun this game is. And the Super Nintendo controller is like 2 joysticks. Like, it's so cool.
A twin-stick shooter on a controller that has no sticks.
Yeah, it's so...
But it works.
It's so freaking badass, and it's so simple. You freaking go around collecting toasters and TVs and just trying to survive. It's just simple.
Everything you just said, I'm sold.
And
Toasters, TVs.
And it's fun.
Yeah, it's a great game. Number 8. I mean, it started it all. Super Mario Kart. And I still love this version of the game.
Super Mario Kart.
I love it.
This game is super charming. It started the Mario Kart franchise, which is huge nowadays. It's a great game, especially doing the battle mode.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm
That's
telling you right
super
now,
fun.
You get me with Koopa Troopa, bring it. I mean, I'm probably top 5 in the world. But this game
Top 5 in the world.
This game's number 8.
That's a bold statement.
Well,
Speaking of
I'm
bold,
ready to back it up.
Speaking of bold, let's move on to our number 7 pick. Zelda: A Link to the Past. Number 7.
Yeah.
It's a Zelda game. It's a beautiful Zelda game.
It is, and it's actually the second Zelda game that I ever played through and beat because I was never a fan of Zelda 2. And I know people have said, oh, you got to try it again. It just wasn't for me. I need to try it again. You're right. I need to get off my old freaking soapbox and play it. But this game, it was just that perfect evolution of The Legend of Zelda into this game. And there's been, talks with all the Zelda remakes. Maybe they'll do that. And I was like, no, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Don't touch it.
Alone.
Leave it at number 7 on our list of best Super Nintendo games of all time.
Super Metroid. Oh, this game is super fun, but hard and confusing.
Yeah.
Like, where are you supposed to go?
Metroidvania
style.
Yeah.
Samus.
Yeah, I love... I shouldn't say I love. I like Metroid on the NES. Don't love it. Like it. Love this game.
Yeah. They took what Metroid was and just made it, can I say, super?
Yeah, I mean, I did not... Really, at the time when this came out, I wasn't super excited. Didn't care to play it. But then once I did, I was like, oh my lord. They actually nailed this game. it's the definitive Metroid game, in my opinion.
It's so good, and I know I keep saying it every time I talk about Metroid, but where's Metroid 4?
It's a game that I kind of played a couple times back as a kid, and I just, because it's a franchise that I love so much, and it's Super Punch-Out.
Yes.
Megadan 29, though, was like, bro, you need to play that game again. He's like, it's a badass Super Nintendo game, and so I did. And I freaking love it.
I remember when we first started the channel, you loved the original Punch-Out. You were like, I don't like the Super Nintendo version. You just didn't play it.
Yeah.
And now you love it, and you play it all the time. The music's great. I will say, it's crazy how different it is.
And I think that was the rub for me. And it took me a while, I think, as a kid. I don't think I was so dialed in on the original. I don't think I understood the game. But I will say, when you freaking just pop somebody in Super Punch-Out, it feels like you're knocking their fucking block off. And it feels so good.
Especially when you can knock them back to the turnbuckle. It's so satisfying.
Yeah, it is.
Speaking of being satisfied, I No Death ran this game, so obviously it's going to be our number 4. Let's Contra 3 The Alien Wars.
Hey everybody, hold tight while Robert toots on his own horn here.
I don't do it often, so when I do it, I get up a little hard, okay? Contra 3 The Alien Wars, what a fantastic Contra game. It's a fantastic co-op game. It might be my favorite in the series so far, but hardcore's slowly getting up there as well.
Because we're putting a lot of time
Because we're putting a lot.
But I'm with you. As of today, the filming of this episode, I will say this is my favorite Contra game as well.
I mean, I haven't played them all, but it's so good. Moving on to number 3. Speaking of the arcades, Turtles in Time.
Yep.
Who doesn't love this game?
It's one of the best Turtles games of all time. Hyperstone Heist is up there as well. But something about the nostalgia for this game, you know you're getting old when you like say quotes and stuff, and
no one gets it.
Everyone's like, you know, like at work, I'll be like, oh, it's getting a little hot in these rhinos. Crickets. And if I like stub my toe, I'm like, oh, my toes.
I knew you were gonna do
Nobody says anything. But I love this game. At the time, it was the definitive Turtles experience. It can't be enough good said about it. And it's a beat 'em up that doesn't have friendly fire, which is a major win.
So
because,
yeah.
Especially when you play with
players that don't know what they're doing. I didn't see anything as pointed at me.
Yeah.
I love this game. It is hard, especially when you get towards the end of the game where you have to throw the bad guys. That part is tough.
Yeah.
You know?
You just gotta figure it out, dude.
I suck at it.
I love it. And I love Turtles, so it's gotta be there. One of the biggest crowning achievements in video game graphics and being able to push a console to its max, in my opinion, is Donkey Kong Country, the original. Now I know a lot of people love this one. A lot of people say this is the best one, Donkey Kong Country 2. And although I love the game, I can't explain why it doesn't connect with me the way Donkey Kong Country does. Something about Donkey Kong Country is just amazing.
It's visually beautiful still. The music is amazing. I know we've kind of already mentioned this earlier, but it's such a awesome game. There's an overview map in between levels.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
I love all the hidden areas, where you get the 3 animals, if you will, like the swordfish, the ostrich, and get the coin collectibles. The variation in levels, you get those minecart levels, which
those are fun.
Almost turns it into a completely different style of a game. Just within one level to the next. It's perfect. The game's fucking perfect.
Speaking of perfect, let's move on to our number 1 game on the Super Nintendo. If this is the number 1 for a lot of people, I don't know what's wrong with you, because it's Super Mario World.
Yeah.
It's a given, but it's like perfected Mario. I know we said Mario 3 was the perfection of Super Mario World. I think I like better.
If I had to pick between the two, I don't know how I could.
Super Mario World is so perfect.
It is. It's an amazing game. The charm, Yoshi.
Yes.
Flying with the cape.
I will say that Super Mario World might be easier than 3.
I agree with you.
I think it's easier than 3, and that's why I think a lot of people like it more. You know what I mean? But in Super Mario World, it's beautiful.
It's perfect. there you have it. There's our top 10 Super Nintendo games of all time, and games you might want to look for if you're looking to purchase or get into.
There's
the Super Nintendo.
So many other games, so many other amazing Super Nintendo games.
It's for sure, and that's just a couple dumb Joe Blows just cracking off a top 10 list real quick right there. So, should you dive into the Super Nintendo in 2021? It's a convoluted question because there's a ton of avenues you could go down. I think you should find a way to play the games. Whether you're young and never had a chance to, I think there's so much to be learned about video game history by diving into the Super Nintendo. It's a great console that still looks great and plays great in 2021. Now, from an original hardware perspective, we've noticed the market settling a bit, but it's still a pretty expensive retro console.
It's still pretty pricey. I feel like if you wait a couple years, it will probably drop some more.
Because we've seen that with the NES.
Yeah, that's what the NES is, and the Super Nintendo is turning 30 this year, so it's super nostalgic for people that grew up playing it. But eventually it will drop, but if you want to get into it now, and you want original hardware, it is going to be pricey. We don't find them out in the wild that often.
No.
We don't find carts. I remember we found Contra 3D Alien Wars for 10 cents, and we were like, holy shit. But that doesn't ever happen. We find a lot more NES stuff than Super Nintendo stuff.
For sure.
It will drop eventually, but it's going to be pricey to get into it if you want original hardware.
Yep.
Now, if you're looking to play it and you don't care, there's a lot of other cheaper options just to get your fix.
Yeah. So obviously, there's the emulation route. You can, play these games via licensed emulation on the SNES Classic,
which is such a cool Snapchat. And there's an exclusive game on the Super Nintendo Classic that was not released, Star Fox 2.
Yeah.
Which that's good reason to get it.
Good emulation option there. Nintendo Switch Online also has the SNES app. Pretty decent selection, and it's only $20 a year for the whole deal.
Updated monthly, which is pretty cool.
The Wii U, you can download a bunch of Super Nintendo games on that, so if you still have a Wii U laying around. And there's obviously the unlicensed side of emulation.
Hackability.
Whether it's RetroPie, smartphones, playing on your CPU, modding old consoles, Wii U, Wii, GameCube, whatever your fancy is, you can mod various consoles to play these games. Then there's the entire universe of clone consoles.
Yes, which we kind of mentioned in our NES episode, which those are really cool if you have the carts laying around, or if you want to get in the carts but now want to buy the console. And then if you have the console laying around and you don't want to stack up a bunch of carts, you can get multi-carts, which are super sweet. You can get a handful of games just on one cartridge. Obviously, it's not super authentic, but it still gets you in the door.
Yeah, and we have a pretty decent one that we got off of Etsy that has a ton, 100 Super Nintendo games. They all play great.
Yeah.
So that's a good, cheap option. So there's tons of ways to play these games. Our personal preference, if you've been watching the channel, you know, we like playing original hardware, and we like playing it on the format of TV that it was meant to be on.
Yes.
We're not haters of HD TVs. We like playing HD consoles on HD TVs. Older consoles, I like playing on a tube.
Yes.
Input lag is a real thing. I've yet to have somebody show me emulation that does not have at least a notch of input lag. Input lag doesn't frustrate me as much on the Super Nintendo for some reason, though, as it does the NES.
Well, that's because I feel like the games... Now someone's going to be like, well, what about this game? But I feel like the games, just in general, are easier.
There's something about...
And they're not as...
precise, the
they're
precision.
I guarantee there's a ton of games out there.
For sure.
Yeah, but I just mean in general compared to the NES, games for the Super Nintendo are longer, so I feel like they're not as hard for the NES. They had limited amount of storage, so they had to make them hard,
Well, and I've beat a lot of really hard games through emulation on the SNES. We've beat Alien Wars numerous times on original hardware and on the SNES Classic. I know there's a little bit of lag there, but I can work around it a lot better.
But we still did it.
I can navigate it. I don't like it. I don't prefer it. But anyway, we always prefer original hardware, but I totally get if you're just wanting to dip your toe in the water, get that nostalgic fix, there's tons of cheaper options out there. So, should you purchase a Super Nintendo in 2021? I guess what we're getting at is read your own mail. If you're wanting to be a purist and kind of a video game collecting enthusiast, I think you need to have a Super Nintendo in your collection.
Yes.
I think it's more important to say you should play these games in 2021.
Yes. Instead of just purchasing one. Find the way that's most convenient for you or that fits your budget. If that's the Switch, if that's hacking, if that's downloading ROMs. I know some of them aren't technically legal, but...
That's on you.
The whole point is to just play the games because the Super Nintendo library has amazing games that need to be played. It's 30 years old, so the new generation needs to experience these games.
Yep.
It's so cool.
And it's
Super Nintendo.
Super relevant in 2021, I think. And I also think it's very accessible. So, there you have it. We love the Super Nintendo.
I don't know if we mentioned this, but it's super.
Yeah. 16-bit. Super power. Now you're playing with power. Super power. Speaking of power, Central Waters. This is a brewery that we were introduced to by Mr. Captain Algebra.
And now they're starting to pop up in our area.
Yeah,
which
for
is
sure.
super cool. This is the Cajun Sunset. This is a stout aged in used oak bourbon barrels with coffee, vanilla beans, and cinnamon added. It feels good to drink. I feel like we haven't had a stout in a while.
Yeah, it's it's kind of summer. Well, it is summer where we are, and kind of hot outside. So stouts don't always jive, but this is divine.
This
dude.
is jiving with me all night long, dude.
Ooh.
This beer is so good. It's so flavorful.
Robert's hoping for business.
Ooh, yeah, I am. Especially when there's that Cajun sunset.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right on the beach. Remember the first sip I took? The flavor was so good and so powerful. It has coffee, vanilla beans, and cinnamon, and I feel like they blend so well together that I can't identify them individually, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like the vanilla really sweetens it up.
And then I do get that strong coffee taste,
Yep.
but it just blends so well that it's just
Yep.
like whatever this flavor is, it's delicious.
It's just kind of got like a sweet, just generalized flavor coming through. It's a very well balanced beer, delicious. One of the better stouts we've had in probably a month or two.
And probably a while, because we're not drinking stout.
Yeah.
But
Very
so
good.
good. Central Waters, they are so good, and there's a reason Captain Algebra showed them to us.
Yeah, for sure. And they are central to my waters, I'll tell you that right now. My high waters.
Now we're both going down.
All right, guys, the Super Nintendo in 2021, it's still relevant. I think there's a lot of reasons to play these games still to this day. While everybody's running to the biggest, latest, and greatest, the shiniest new thing in the room, whether it be the PS5, the Xbox One Series X, and all those things, man, there's still so many great games that everyone's missed out on.
Yeah.
And
well, what's crazy is we're still picking up Super Nintendo games in 2021, adding them to our collection. Like, I'm still discovering new games because I didn't grow up with it. It's just, I'd much rather drop a little bit of money than get the new stuff.
Well, I think it's a great point. And one thing that we haven't maybe said enough is, yes, some retro game consoles are expensive. But you can go out and spend $500 on a PlayStation 5 and maybe get one game. Or if you put $300 even into a Super Nintendo collection, you'd be off to a really good start.
You'd have a giant collection, and you'd be able to play the games day one.
Yeah.
I just want to say
that. And I think you might actually enjoy it more. That's just my humble opinion on that. But nonetheless, we always appreciate you tuning in and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you next time right here on Gaming Off the Grid. If you get a good working one, it actually works pretty well. The NES Super parents across the globe were confused. Why? Why do you need this news? Okay. Oh, yeah. Tommy likey.
Ooh. I wonder what percent this is.
Well. Oh, it's 12 fluid ounces.
Oh, dude. 21%.
Robert's hoping for business.
Ooh, yeah, I am. Especially when there's that Cajun sunset.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right on the beach.
I don't even know what we're doing right now. But, yeah, I really like it.
I remember the first tip. I remember the first sip I took, I was like, dude, the flavor is so good. It has...
You know, it's not even Halloween yet, but millions of kids already know what they want for Christmas, a new video game system called Nintendo 64.
Nintendo's new game machine is 64 bits, making it the most powerful machine on the market.
Nintendo took the power of a $100,000 computer workstation and put it into an affordable home game machine. The result? Some of the best video games ever made. Just a few years ago, this was state-of-the-art, flat and two-dimensional, with characters who had very limited movements. With Nintendo's 64-bit technology, it's a whole new game. Now Mario lives in a 3D world, and you can make him go wherever you want.
Nintendo 64. So what's the big deal, and why is Toys R Us already sold out?
Whatever you thought about video games before, set it aside, try it. It's a whole new experience.
Parents, you've been warned. Nintendo 64 is very likely to produce this year's biggest holiday headache.
Welcome to N64.
But it's me, Mario.
Yeah, tell it to the judge.
Tubers and trolls, Chris here with Telesplash Gaming, one of the OG members of the Brew Crew with you, and you're watching my buddies Robert and Wes live out their nerd fantasies, drinking beer and playing games at Gaming Off the Grid.
The N64 Bad Beer Month. I think we can get rid of these glasses.
Yep, we're not pouring High Life. We're drinking straight out of the bottle.
Yeah, heck yeah, it's a champagne beer. Oh, did you hear that crack? That psst. Dude, cheers to Bad Beer Month. Cheers to Miller High Life. Get this probably out of the way. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but probably one of our favorite beers.
Yeah, one of our most drank beers in the game room. But we're talking about the N64 right now. The N64 launched September 29th of 1996, over a year after the PlayStation 1 came out.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Sony got boots on the ground, and I think the N64 did see some delays early on, but the hype around the console was for real.
Yeah.
If you grew up at the time, PS1 was already out, the Saturn was already out, and people were waiting for that next Nintendo console. Came out at $199.99, which was pretty expensive at the time. Sony launched $100 higher than that, but they had adjusted their price down to $199.
Yeah.
I think in May, preceding the N64's release, like 6 to 7 months after Sony had released the console. I think they were getting ready for Nintendo to jump on the scene.
They knew they were coming. So Sony crushed this generation in sales. The N64 only sold like 32, almost 33 million units, and the freaking PS1 sold over 100.
Yeah.
Like that's not even close.
It is kind of weird looking at the data. Like at least in the neck of the woods I was in, it seemed like a lot of people had the N64, and there were more kids playing that, at least in my inner circle, than the Sony PlayStation. But Sony just crushed it, and the N64 only moved 20 million units in the United States, which is pretty low from like what my memory wants to tell me. The data doesn't support what my brain's telling me.
It's so low because when I was a kid, obviously it wasn't when it first came out. It was probably like 2000. Everyone had an N64, and I didn't know that many people that had a PS1.
Yeah, it was wild. I guess Nintendo probably wasn't super happy with its performance. As you look at the NES, sold 61 million, 49 million units for the Super Nintendo, and then here you have the N64 moving far less, coming in at that 32 million range. Again, the data is kind of surprising to me when I look at it, because I'm like, wow, I guess I would have thought it was higher. I don't know. And maybe the 4 players and stuff like that just made kids like, oh, my friend's got an N64.
So I can
maybe I don't need it.
Yeah, you don't need it. You can just go over.
But it definitely did not repeat the success of the NES and the Super Nintendo, and it was super freaking hyped. So somewhere along the line, I don't know if it's Sony munching into those console homes and taking those sales, but it just didn't do all that well.
What is your nostalgia and memories of the N64? I know that, like, I have huge nostalgia for it.
The nostalgia is very high for this console.
Yes.
I would say, some of my best gaming memories were from this era. We had a group of neighbors up the road, and their oldest son was close to my age. Jimmy was his name, and they had his little brother was closer to my brother's age, and it was so fun. We would play 4-player N64 all the freaking time. We'll talk about games a little bit later on, but we were playing so much GoldenEye and the wrestling games and Diddy Kong. Like, we played games all the time. If school was called off, we were playing games. After school, we were playing games all the time, 4-player. It was so much fun. A lot of just killer memories around the N64, and honestly, the N64 is probably the console that I wanted the most in my entire life. Like, You know, there's that thing that you're just like, I have to have that.
I want it so bad.
That was the N64 for me. I wanted one so damn bad. I was just obsessed with it.
And you didn't get it the year it came out, right? You got it a year after.
No, I got it the year I must have been the Christmas of '98 because Madden '99 was one of the games I got with it. And I think I got GoldenEye. You know, over going to different people's houses and stuff like my grandparents and that for Christmas, people were getting me that stuff. But I did Christmas morning. I think I just got Madden '99 in the console. So yeah, it was this console. It was the one with the atomic purple controller.
I got my N64 for Christmas too. And spoiler alert, if there are young kids watching, I'm sorry, but the N64 is the reason that I discovered that Santa wasn't real.
Oh, hey!
So naughty or nice. That kind of sucked because I went down Christmas Eve to get some water and I saw it on the table, and then the next morning it said from Santa.
And you're like, wait a minute.
I was like, wait a second. But anyway, thank you so much, Santa, for it, because I played it so much. I didn't play that much 4-player with it initially. I just played it by myself. But I had Episode 1 Pod Racers. I had Shadows of the Empire. I was way into Star Wars during this time period. So
it was a great console for that. Yeah, there was 3 decent Star Wars games on it. Yeah.
Those games so much. I think I had a couple others, but those were the 2 games I played nonstop. I had like the Pod Racer toy that I would sit next to me while I was playing Pod Racers.
You're like, hey,
I was
buddy.
a freaking nerd. I still am. But so much nostalgia. I played it so much.
Yeah, it definitely, and I think for a lot of folks in our age demographic, I think they fall on the same boat with the N64. Lots of nostalgia. Collecting for it in 2021, if you're looking to get into collecting for it, kind of recouping what you had as a child, you know, that's what a lot of us crazy collectors do. Let's talk about what it's like to get into. There's a lot of variety.
Oh my god.
Probably one of the coolest amounts of variety from console perspective resides within the N64 with all the fantastic colors they put out.
Dude, I love how many different console variants / controller variants / there's so many. So obviously there's the charcoal, the gray, that's the main one, and then there was like the jungle green, which is such a cool color.
Yeah.
And then there was ice blue, which is another cool color. There was the great purple, the fire orange, the smoke black, which is really cool. And then I know there was a bunch of like other ones that were released in Japan. I think there was a exclusive one to Korea. There's all these different weird ones that are all cool.
And I know in North America that we also got that Pikachu one, which is pretty sought after by collectors. Cool. I think that's probably the most fun part. Like if you get into folks who collect for the N64, if they're really into it, it's rare to have them only have one console.
They usually have all of the colors.
Yeah, there's a lot of collectors that do, and you know the controllers, which we've got, you know, a ton of controllers. This is a kind of a pain in the ass if you want to collect for the N64 because this controller maybe doesn't hold up the best, and it's because of the own doing of the games they put out. But there was some Mario Party games that required heavy rotation on this joystick, which is, you know, doesn't hold up the best. So if you're picking one up, you always want to check the joystick. Everybody, if you watch collectors and YouTubers, they'll always say, oh, it had a tight stick. That's what they mean. And we're fortunate that everything in our collection, we'll get right if it doesn't, but you'll find some of these where this son of a bitch is laying over.
It's a limp dick, dude.
Yeah.
It's so soft.
You want to have a tight stick, yeah.
It's from this freaking Mario Party game.
Yeah, it's crazy. But there's a lot of different colors, and most of those fantastic consoles that came out had a corresponding controller that you could also get. They had the translucent, like this is the one that came with this set, the Atomic Purple. And I don't know if you could buy the Atomic Purple controller by itself or only with this. Now, you could get the Grape Purple one. Leave in the comment section if you could, but I think this was exclusive to this bundle.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I just don't recall seeing anybody that had this controller and didn't have it from this bundle. And then, you know, you had all the solid color variants as well.
Yes.
There's solid green, solid black. I've seen blue, I've seen red. I think I've seen yellow.
Yeah, there's a yellow one, I think, for like Donkey Kong or something like that.
Well, there is that rare. I think you had to order it specifically, maybe from Nintendo Power, but it had like that cover, that Donkey Kong banana looking cover.
Cool.
I've always kind of wanted that. You can see how you can go down a major rabbit hole with the N64, which I think is part of what makes it so fun to collect for. I mean, there was even a gold console.
Oh, the gold one's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's a Toys R Us exclusive, maybe, but the gold one's badass.
I just love how it's kind of, you can do all this collecting for colors and stuff, and you haven't even gotten into playing the games yet, which is crazy. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm playing 4-player is everyone has a different color.
Yeah.
Like, if we have the same color, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no,
we gotta
we can't
have
be
our
friends.
own. Yeah. So that's just cool, and I feel like it encouraged people to go out and buy multiple consoles, which was weird.
Yeah, it's definitely something that Nintendo's dabbled with this. You know, we've already done the GameCube video on this, but there was the purple and the silver and the black, and there was a couple other variants, you know, in different markets, and I'm probably missing a few, but it wasn't as extensive as this. And even in current times, you know, with, you know, the Switch, yeah, you got different Joy-Cons and stuff, and they released like the Mario. They're doing it a little.
They're kind of recreating it because they're releasing some like translucent ones or fluorescent ones like this, but it's not the same. I know the Game Boy is like the closest for color variants.
Yeah.
You know, because that was really
they were
cool.
just, I think, just during this time, they were just way into that. You know, the Game Boy Color just had a ton of variants, and even the Game
Relish.
Boy, the Game Boy Pocket before that had some different ones and things like that. But that's, I think, the coolest thing they did with this console was that, I don't know if you want to call it personalization, but you kind of had that feeling like, man, I'm the only kid that's got the Jungle Green N64.
Yeah.
And it was just cool.
Mine.
Yeah.
Mine. Speaking of controllers, we got to jump into N64 accessories. Nintendo, like usual, goes nuts with accessories. So obviously there's the controllers.
Yep.
And then there's memory cards, which are super important. And then what's really cool, I always feel like I'm loading a gun. I've never loaded a gun, so I don't know if it's even close. But rumble packs. It's just so crazy.
This was a big deal at the time. The rumbling of the controller, it's like, oh my god, this game's so realistic. I got 3D.
It vibrates.
Yeah, and these are not as fun as you might remember them being. That's just my opinion. They do throw the weight distribution off on the controller.
It's very top heavy once you put it in.
But there is something nostalgic about it.
It is.
There is.
And when you go back and play it nowadays, it doesn't even rumble that much.
No,
because you're used to like PlayStation 4 and all that rumble. But
I could be wrong, but wasn't there a commercial where the kid's like, oh, he's
probably.
like, ah!
It's too rumbling.
This is the Rumble Pack. The big reason why Star Fox 64 is the coolest cinematic gaming experience there is.
I don't know that, unless you're wanting that full experience and nostalgia, I don't know that it's necessary to get a Rumble Pack. I wouldn't say it is. You probably need a memory card before you'd need that. The expansion pack was a big deal.
Yes, that's a really big deal.
I want to say the first game that required that was Donkey Kong 64, which I've always felt like that game was a letdown. Sorry if you love it. I never, coming out of the Donkey Kong Country games that preceded it on the Super Nintendo, I was so hyped. And I remember when I played it, I was just, the game felt very bare to me, very hollow. I just never have really connected with that game. But there are games that came after that do require that expansion pack, so you're gonna want to get one of those probably if you're gonna collect for the console.
And if you're a reseller and you find N64s out in the wild, here's a hot tip: sell the expansion pack separately.
Yeah.
You'll make more money
because you can get those original jumper packs for the N64 super cheap. Most retro gaming stores have them for $5 or $6, and you can sell the expansion pack for like 40 to 50.
Yeah, which is it's a little hot tip. And then obviously you got the cleaning kit, which was super important because it's still cartridge based.
Yeah.
Nintendo was very slow to get in the disc game, and when they did, they had to be different because of the GameCube discs. Weird.
Yeah, didn't they have like a transfer pack too to like maybe stuff over to your Game Boy I never did that.
Oh yeah, I don't know much about that either.
I know there was a voice recognition deal for one of the, I want to say like Hey You Pikachu. I put an N in there for some reason. Something like that. I think there's a lot of third party stuff that got thrown in the mix too, but that's kind of the core. I'm sure we're missing some really obscure shit.
So one accessory I want to talk about real quick is the Game Shark. Obviously this is used to cheat with N64 games, but a little secret: this can unlock your N64 and make it region free. So if you have imports like this guy, you can play it on any version of the N64. It's a super easy way to play imports, and you don't have to mod your console. If you're collecting for it or starting to collect for it, I think you only really need the expansion pack and a controller.
Yeah.
Like, and a memory card maybe.
Yeah, because some games don't even require the memory card, but some do. So
it's all depending on what games you get. But speaking of games, let's talk about our top 10 N64 games. This is crazy. So we've been doing these top 10s in our past videos. We're very nostalgic for this console, But the games are...
This was a very hard list to make.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to get to 10. If you had to go beyond 10, it's really tough. But let's talk about the games. Number 10 on the list is an early release for the N64. Always been obsessed with the water physics in this game, especially for the time. Wave Race 64. It's a game I feel like everybody had.
I love racers and boat racers.
Yeah.
It's such a sweet game.
You know, there was Jet Moto for the jet ski connoisseurs and that out there on the PS1. But Wave Race 64, it's still a really fun game to go back to. A little primitive, but the water physics are really good in this game. They did a fantastic job. And then there's another great racer at number 9.
Number 9, and this game is very unique. Diddy Kong Racing. When I first played this, I was so used to Mario Kart that I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's way different, but it's so cool.
It is a very good game, and it's a game that there's a lot of folks out there that prefer it over Mario Kart 64.
Now, I
think that's taking it too far.
It's still good. It's still
really good, and if you're into that 4-player action, Diddy Kong Racing's a good one to pick up. I actually think we've got it CID.
Ooh, yeah,
as kind of looking over here.
It's a rare game.
Yeah. And not rare in like that you can't find it, rare as in the publisher.
Yes. Oh, they were on fire back
yeah, they were.
And speaking of 4-player action, we're moving on to number 8, and that's GoldenEye. Dude, one of my favorite 4-player games on the N64, even though I suck at it.
I played the hell out of the game. I know the map, the complex, still better than any human being I've ever met. I know it better than the layout of my own house.
Every time I play it, I don't even... It's just, every time I spawn, I'm dead. It's
I just appear. I know where everything is. I put the Perfect Dark out because this is a superior game to GoldenEye. I just don't connect with this like I did GoldenEye, and I don't have the nostalgia for it.
And I honestly haven't played it as much as GoldenEye.
I haven't either. This came out, and I was kind of already moving past it. I believe when I got this, I think I had the Dreamcast.
So you were way into that.
I was kind of like, I loved it. I thought it was a good game, but something about GoldenEye, and maybe it's just because I like James Bond and Gold Bond and things like that. I mean, I don't even know if James Bond is the best Bond. I do prefer GoldenEye to Perfect Dark, even though I know, technically speaking, it's a superior game. I almost spilt the beer there. Superior game.
Speaking of spilling beer, moving on to our number 7 game, dude. This game is so ridiculous. And he is a drunk.
Yeah.
Conker's Bad Fur Day. I love this game. It's very edgy.
What were they thinking?
Isn't this also a rare game?
It is, yeah.
Dude.
GoldenEye was as well. So, I mean,
they were on fire.
They had their fingerprints all over this console.
What a funny game.
Yeah.
And I did not play it when I was a kid, and I doubt my parents would have even let me play it.
But if you're into that 3D platforming collectathon type of game, like Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, those type of things, cut from the same cloth. It's got an edge to it, and it's rated M for a reason.
There's some really fun multiplayer stuff in that game. Which is really sweet.
Yeah.
Now moving on to number 6, and that's Super Mario 64.
It's pretty low on our list.
Honestly, I wanted to put this at number 10.
You gotta give it its due.
Yes.
I don't love the game either, but it was iconic at the time.
And when I was a kid, I had this game, and I absolutely loved it. So I have huge nostalgia for it, even though I hate it now as an adult. I didn't even want to, honestly, to put it on the list, but I had to. I think the N64 actually got delayed because of Super Mario 64.
Well, yeah, I mean,
because they were just working so much.
It launched with 2 games. That maybe was a reason for its, lack of sales, if you will. It came out with this and Pilot Wings 64. What game were you gonna get? I'm not crapping on Pilot Wings, but they basically released with 1 game that you needed to have. Pilot Wings was okay, but it's like they could have maybe came out with a little bit more, but
and I know Super Mario 64 is like everyone's top N64 game.
Not for us.
Not for us. We're not IGN. So moving on. To number 5.
The series started on the N64.
It is fun going back and playing the original Smash Bros. Because the roster's like 8 people.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because we're so used to the Switch version where there's like hundreds.
Yeah.
This game is still so much fun.
It is. We actually play this. There's a arcade bar near us that usually has this and Mario Kart 64 set up. And this is always a fun one to sit on and play on a projector screen.
Even though it's on a projector and it looks like garbage.
Oh, yeah.
But it's still so much fun.
N64 in general kind of looks like garbage. So imagine blowing it up on a shitty projector screen. It's hard to even tell what you're doing. But this game is a lot of fun. It got the series started, and it's a staple for a Nintendo IP. They did a really good job with this one. Number 4.
Number 4.
Zelda, Ocarina of Time.
Ocarina of Time. This game is beautiful. It's such a fun game.
Yeah, it's not my favorite Zelda game, but it's one of those few games that I do like going back and playing on the N64. There's some of these games on this list, as much as I love GoldenEye, it's hard to find people who can sit down if they weren't way into it and weren't like at the level that I was at that game and have them have any fun playing it.
Yeah.
It's just not with the control scheme and the way you have to strafe with the C buttons.
Very tough.
That's a tough one, but Ocarina of Time, it has stood the test of time. No pun intended.
Whoa.
But I love that game a lot. Number 3 is one of your favorite series
Number 3
ever.
If this was my personal list, this would be number 1. Banjo-Kazooie. I love collectathons. I love the charm of this game, the music. This game is beautiful. It's so much fun, and I love the whole franchise, even though it hasn't really... There's nothing lately in it. I mean, he is in Smash now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The original Banjo-Kazooie, such a fun, unique, weird game.
Yeah, it's very good. I'm not a huge collectathon game fan, but if you were going to get into those, it's top of the shelf.
It's so good.
Mario Kart 64. Just amazing. You still had to really be good to get the power slide to work, and those who can, it's like the haves and the have-nots. You either know how to power slide or you don't. This is a game I'm still pretty good at. I'm better at some of the other Mario Karts, just because, for whatever reason, Mario Kart's a game once the newer ones come out, I very seldom go back and play the older ones. But I do love this game.
And I love how, in this game, if you know how to do the stuff, you can win. Because in the new games, it's kind of like, oh, you don't know who's going to win, because it kind of keeps it fair.
It's kind of randomizer, yeah. There's some rubber banding, for sure, in the newer games.
In the older ones, man, it's such a fun game, and we play it all the time at that barcade. It's so much fun.
It's a go-to.
And now moving on to number 1, we play this game probably multiple times a year.
Yeah, for sure.
We love wrestling, and I know there's other wrestling games that are pretty good, but No Mercy is such a fun game.
Insert the AKI games, or AKI, however you say it, games from THQ here.
Yeah.
I'd say WrestleMania 2000, I get it, 1A, 1B.
They're both really
good. The
good.
linchpin for me of why I always go with No Mercy is I liked the customization a little bit better, and this might not seem like a big deal, but it was a huge deal at the time. You could go backstage.
Oh, which is so much fun.
And it had pretty awesome interactive backstage environments. It made the game so... The customization you could do, we would always do a 30-man Royal Rumble, no ring outs,
and just move.
No pinning. The only way was to knock someone out. And so these would go on forever.
Hours, dude, that's hours.
You'd go backstage, just be freaking beating people up with stuff, and it'd take forever to knock them out. We would play it for like a whole afternoon. Just, I love No Mercy. I think it is still the best wrestling game. WrestleMania 2000 is really damn good too.
It's up there.
Like, they're really close. And if, I flipped a coin, and if I ended up with WrestleMania 2000 or No Mercy, I would be okay. I ever so slightly prefer No Mercy. It's the backstage environments.
Dude, No Mercy is one of my favorite wrestling games, but I think I prefer All-Stars over it just because it's more arcadey.
Yeah, All-Stars is cool. On PS3, Xbox 360.
But, dude, No Mercy is badass. I know there's a ton of other games we didn't mention. Obviously, there's other wrestling games. There's Majora's Mask, which is a great Zelda game.
Yeah.
I think there's Hydro Thunder. Can't forget that.
Yeah, that's a good pull there, because I believe the N64 version is the only home console option that lets you play 4-player.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Dreamcast version's closer to the arcade port, but I'm pretty sure it's only 2-player.
That's so dumb.
Well, and I could be wrong, but I'm just going off of the wrist here. I think that's why the Hydro Thunder on N64 is like a $50 game.
Because of the 4-player
I think it's
aspect.
the 4-player.
Damn.
It doesn't look as good as the Dreamcast one. Doesn't play as good as the Dreamcast one, but you can play 4-player.
I freaking love Hydro Thunder. There's so many other...
Star Soldier.
It's
the game isn't rare, but it's a rare occurrence on the N64. It could be the only spaceship shooter, possibly, that I know of. That's like it's a vertically scrolling spaceship traditional shooter. A lot of the stuff on the N64 is messing with 3D.
Yeah, it's getting really weird. Star Fox 64.
Yeah.
Obviously, I talked about them earlier, but the Star Wars games, Pod Racers, Shadows of the Empire, those are phenomenal games. I think there's a Rogue game on there.
Yeah, there is Rogue Leader.
Yeah, Rogue Leader, the first one.
Yep.
Which is really cool. There's a lot of great games, and then a lot of games that don't hold up.
Yeah. It's tough to say there's a lot of great games, because even on our top 10, there's some games I could be okay never playing again.
True. Yeah.
It's just my opinion on the console. So there's a little bit of the history of the console. There are some of the accessories and the games. And now we got to kind of come to a decision here of kind of our opinion. Let's talk about the current market and if you should jump into the N64 in 2021. If you've got some money laying around and you want to collect video games.
The current market is very high. A lot of the games are very expensive. They're hard to find. I know our buddy TeeSpring is going for a complete set right now.
Yeah, it's been a pain for him too.
It hurts me watching him how much money he's spending.
Yeah.
It's insane because a lot of games are super expensive and they're not even worth it, I feel like.
Yeah, so the market's high, and it's been high for quite some time.
And I don't see it dipping for a while.
I don't either. I
because
think
it's so nostalgic. That's why.
Right in that wheelhouse of people who are getting disposable income and wanting to go back. The console, however, is a very reliable console.
Yes.
So if you had to compare it from a reliability standpoint to the Sega Saturn and the PS1, which are both pretty reliable, but they're disc-based consoles, and those disc drives, they're a bit of a problem.
They fail.
The N64 will be around longer than us.
Oh,
and it
dude.
will. I very seldom find one that doesn't work.
We find them all the time, and they usually fire up immediately.
Yeah.
They're so hard to kill. And I will say that the controllers, that's the struggle because of the limp joysticks, but other than that, even the controllers hold up. Like, it's that hard plastic, you know?
It's fun to collect for. It is fun just because of the color variants and the variety. I get why people like collecting for it. I understand it.
And the nostalgia.
My opinion, I think our opinion, there's only a fistful of must-play games. How do you collect? That's the question.
Yes.
Do you collect for collecting's sake, or do you collect to play games? Because if you're wanting to play games, I've already said, this is the console I'm probably the most nostalgic for, and it's one of the least played consoles in the game room today. This game, or this console, lives on better in the rearview mirror, and in the memory, and in your nostalgic heart, than it does in real life. A lot of times you go back to an N64 game, and you're just going to be let down.
Yeah.
I just don't think it delivers
it's
to what you remember. That's my thoughts on the console.
It's so nostalgic, and I think, honestly, this is going to be a hot take, but I think the N64 is overrated.
Going back to it, I agree.
Because people put it on this high pedestal because of nostalgia, and I freaking loved it as a kid.
And so did I.
But it's just, it does not, I know people get mad when you don't say it, but it does not hold up.
Yeah, it's tough to go back to, and again, I wanted an N64 as my most wanted Christmas present I can ever remember, but I really think we could trim our N64 collection down to 5 to 10 games, and I wouldn't lose any sleep.
No, it would be fine, and we would probably make a ton of money.
Yeah, it's something we might even have to consider, because as long as I got WrestleMania 2000 or No Mercy, I'm okay.
Yeah, as long as I have Banjo-Kazooie, that's all I need.
I mean, I don't know. So I think it depends on what you play and how you collect. Maybe there's someone watching this that's like, you guys are dead wrong. I love these games. Touche. That's you.
This is just our opinion and the way we see it. And I will say one thing about the N64 is, if you've never played an N64 and you're jumping into it for the first time, there is a learning curve. First off,
a lot of frustration.
The controller, how do you hold it? Figure it out. It's 3 prongs, and then the game's inverted controls on some of them look terrible.
Yeah.
It's very tough if you've never played it, and if you don't have that nostalgia, you're going to play it for 5 minutes and be like, no thanks.
We did an N64 event, and Robert always says, how do you hold the controller? Obviously, we both know how. But it was unique because a lot of kids came.
Yeah.
And almost every kid that grabbed the controller, we're talking young kids, and we were doing Mario Kart, they're like, how do you hold this? They didn't know.
Yeah.
And it kind of like hit us that day. I was like, man, how many kids have asked you how to hold this? And you're like, pretty much everyone.
A lot of people. For us, I know exactly what to do because I grew up with it.
Yeah.
But they literally were holding it like this and then like trying to reach their thumb over. And like,
it was
or
weird.
they were like, it's just, they just didn't get it.
I guess for us, what we're getting at, the price of getting into it in 2021. Now, if you've still got, which a lot of the stuff we have is from when we were kids.
Yes.
So we haven't bought a lot of N64 games since we started collecting together and started the channel. But your money will go a lot further, and I think you're going to feel better about your purchases if you dive into something else. The quality of the games, in my opinion, does not equate to the dollar value that they bring.
Not even close.
Maybe a hot take, but I just it's one of our least played and collect for consoles. It's really hard to say, oh, you're missing out. There's some consoles we would say that for.
Yeah.
If you're watching this and you've never played the Super Nintendo, you're missing out. The NES, you're missing out. And even the generation after this, which is a lot, tends to be a lot cheaper to get into. The GameCube, not so much, but PS2 and Xbox. The Wii's really, easy to get into right now. I just don't know that the N64 is that. You can read your own mail, make your own decisions.
Yeah, definitely. If you're a huge nostalgia for it, or if you really want to get into it, go ahead, do it. But for us, it's a very middle of the road, if not bottom of the road console. Overrated. I'm gonna say it again. It just doesn't.
I wish I could stick up for it.
Yeah, because
I just can't.
I loved it as a kid.
Other than the wrestling games, those in and of themselves are possibly worth owning the console. But aside from that, and maybe a couple others, it would be a hard pass. If we didn't have what we have currently, and today we had to pay current market prices for some of this stuff, we probably wouldn't do it.
Nope. It just doesn't hold up. I do want to bring up one thing, though, because we were talking about all the different color variants, and I don't know how we forgot about this. The game cartridges are different colors.
Yeah.
Which, that's another cool reason to collect for it, because, like the Tony Hawk, like yellow, black, that's really cool.
Yeah, the first Tony Hawk's blue, I think. That is a cool thing.
That's a cool...
Makes it fun, but it's...
But still, you're getting it for the color and not really the game.
It's like, it's fun to collect for, but it's not super fun to play.
Yeah.
So is it worth collecting for at all? That is the question of the episode. Let's talk about this beer.
Yes, let's talk about this
Bad Beer Month.
I think we've done this on the channel before. This is the Got G beer, Miller High Life.
Yep.
The champagne of beers. This is one of the best cheap beers, hands down. So good. Such a good beer that if you drink a Miller High Life when you get off work, oh my god, it tastes so good.
Yeah.
It tastes good. I love introducing people to Miller High Life that aren't beer drinkers because they're like, whoa.
Yeah.
They're like, this is actually good.
I think it has a bad stigma for some reason. There's a lot of people that, if they talk about High Life, they come like, ooh, it is the best cheap beer you can get. It's not even close. Trust us, we've had most of them. I'll never forget when I was working at a grocery store chain for many a years. There was a guy that came in. He was one of the craft beer distributors, and I was already into the High Life thing. And I asked him, I was like, "What's your favorite beer that's like not craft?" He's like, "Oh, Miller High Life, hands down." I think there's a lot of craft beer fans, just beer fans in general, that would back us on saying High Life is the champagne of beers for a reason.
Get it out of the glass bottles. It's so good in the glass bottles. I don't know what it is.
Unless you like that metallic aluminum taste.
I've had it in the cans, but
so have I. Yeah.
Glass bottle, man, so good.
Yep.
Premium brewed, and I don't think we've talked about it in a long time. I think we showed it in our game room tour, but we have drank it so much that we found one where the label was upside down, and it's right behind me on the shelf. That's
one of our crowning moments.
Yeah, I love that. It's never been opened. Label upside down.
I've called this place out before in episodes, but if you're ever in the Des Moines, Iowa area, you got to check out the High Life Lounge.
Oh.
Amazing. Shag carpet, old beer signs, wood paneling, bar food that you would have never seen on a menu except for maybe in the 70s.
It's comfort food, baby.
And I think all beers they have on tap is stuff only brewed before 78. It's one of the best places
High Life on tap
on the planet.
Dude, I literally say it's Grandpa's bar and it's Grandma's kitchen. Like, that's what the place is, dude. It's my favorite place in the
You need
morning.
to sell them that.
I should.
Grandpa's bar,
Grandma's kitchen. That should be their slogan.
Yeah, it's so good.
Miller High Life. Dude, yeah, their green bean casserole. Oh my god.
They have roasted chicken.
Oh,
what do you get? You get that like deviled eggs?
Dude, their deviled eggs are so good.
Bacon wrapped tater tots, spam egg and cheese sandwich.
Oh my god, crinkle cut fries.
I think we're gonna
mashed potatoes.
We gotta wrap this up and order some food.
Yeah, we do. And drink some more High Life. And not play the N64.
Yeah, guys, hopefully we didn't ruffle anybody's feathers too much. We know there's a lot of N64 fans out there. It's a leap to say we're not fans of the console. I'm fans of my memory.
Yep.
I'm a fan of what it did at the time. I think there's so many cool things about what it did with its colors and all that. But just to be perfectly honest, in 2021, it does not deliver. If you're a fan of Donkey Kong and you played Donkey Kong 64 as a kid and you played Donkey Kong Country, and you go back and put in Donkey Kong Country, it will be just like you remember it. I promise. It's badass. It's going to deliver. And if you haven't played Donkey Kong 64 in many a year, and you put it in today, it's going to let you down. It just will. And that's the problem with the console.
It's more nostalgic than it is great.
We appreciate you guys tuning in and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Off the Grid.
So Sony crushed this stage. Fuck.
Wow.
That's going to drive parents nuts.
Is it ever?
Kids are going to want it. The parents are not going to be able to find it. It's one of those classic Christmas things, and I can't believe we're talking about Christmas already.
I know. You know what? I can hardly figure out paddle pong. I don't know how the kids play this thing. You ever sat down with a kid when they start playing these things?
No, they're very good at it.
Oh, they're excellent. Let's head over to Perry and Ron right now for sports night. They look like a couple of electronic game players.
You play Nintendo?
No.
An ass this fat can fit into a cartridge this small.
I'm not fat. I'm getting in shape.
Very reliable console.
Yes.
So if you had to compare it from a lot.
Sorry.
I'll never forget when I was working at a
But just how easy is it to play Nintendo 64? After all, the controller looks like it could be used on some kind of military jet.
Well, if you happen to click on this video, you're probably among the few and the proud that are still talking about Generation 6 video game consoles in 2021. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the Gen 6 console with the handle. Oh yeah, that's right, the Nintendo GameCube, and let you know should you purchase and collect for this console in 2021. What are we drinking today?
Today we're drinking White Chocolate Raspberry Imperial White Milk Stout by Southern Tier Brewing Company.
All right, you know the drill. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you never miss one of our bi-weekly uploads. And sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and let's talk about the Nintendo GameCube and if it's worth purchasing in 2021.
Nothing sexier than a complete GameCube collection. I just love running my fingers over the spines of the game. Oh, hey, what's up everybody? This is Retro Wolf 88 and you're watching Gaming Off the Grid. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Enjoy the show.
All right, here we go. It's hard to argue that Gen 6 is probably one of the generations that folks are most nostalgic for right now. GameCube prices are soaring, PS2's kind of coming up, Dreamcast market's already been kind of crazy. But today we're going to hone in on Nintendo's console that they put a handle on, which we'll talk
favorite thing.
We'll talk a little bit more about that later and really dive into, is it feasible to collect for in 2021? This was Nintendo's first disc-based console.
Yes.
You know, the prior generation, they had a hard time fitting everything they wanted to on the cartridges, so they dove into the disc side.
dove into the disc side. But, like Nintendo, trying to be different, the disc was this big.
Yeah, I mean,
why'd they have to do that?
Why? I don't know. But anyway, the mini disc console of the generation. The console launched on November 18th of 2001, which
means it's 20 years old this year.
Yeah, so I think it was a couple days after the OG Xbox, so it technically was the last console released in the generation.
Yep.
You had the Dreamcast quite a bit prior to that, and then the PS2.
And then Xbox
Yep.
and GameCube.
Yeah, you know, and it came with the 4 controller ports, was kind of in line with everything else from the generation, with the exception of the PS2.
Yikes.
But it was also the third worst selling console of the generation with an install base of, I think, like 22 million.
That's
range,
crazy.
which you wouldn't think that, because now people are probably the most nostalgic for the GameCube.
Well, it's weird, but it kind of makes sense because growing up, everyone I knew had a PS2.
Yeah.
Only one person I knew had a GameCube. One person.
Well, and the data supports it. I mean, the PS2 sold like 155 million
everyone
units.
had it.
I don't know about you, and this is kind of getting into like my memories and where my nostalgia lies for this, but my brother got a GameCube, and he got one fairly early on, and I believe he got Mario Sunshine and Spider-Man with it.
Ooh, nice.
But at that age, I was so beyond wanting to play Nintendo games. They seemed kind of kiddie and childish to me, which is odd because I love collecting for Nintendo stuff now. But man, being Luigi in Luigi's Mansion just wasn't as cool as being Tommy Vercetti in Vice City, you know? And so I was over Nintendo, and I think maybe Nintendo kind of ran up against that here, where a lot of their NES and SNES SNES kids were looking for more mature content, more mature games, and they were maybe migrating over to the PS2 or the Xbox.
They were probably teenagers. They were angsty punks.
It was just a really weird time for me, and I remember my brother getting the GameCube, and you would have thought I would have been excited, and I was just like, okay, whatever.
Who cares?
I have a PS2, who cares? But I did end up really getting into it and enjoying it while he was playing it. So, we already mentioned Nintendo's first disc-based console, but you talked about the mini discs, which I do think maybe hurt Nintendo a little bit. It's weird to say this now, but it didn't play DVDs.
Yeah, but back in the day, man, the PS2 and the Xbox, that's why, and they could also play CDs.
I mean, it seems goofy, but man, when you had a PS2 as a kid, being able to play a DVD on that,
it was everything. You did everything on it.
It was like, I don't need anything else. The other odd thing was, being the last one to release, this probably or did have the worst online or network connectivity.
Yeah.
You had to buy another adapter. And my math might not be right, but I think there was only 8 or 9 games that could be compatible with that network adapter, and that wasn't even all online. I think there was only 5 games that had online gameplay.
The 3 were just LAN party.
It was kind of like you buy this extra thing, but for why? And there just wasn't a big online presence. I think we already mentioned the handle. I think they were trying to say, hey, this is the next wave of the N64. Carry this over to your friend's house. It's smaller. It's like a lunchbox. You can take it anywhere with you and play multiplayer, 4-player, which there's a ton of fun to be had in doing so.
There is so much fun. Let's talk about our nostalgia of the GameCube. You already mentioned that your brother had it, and I only knew one person growing up that had one.
Do you remember what games you played and stuff?
So here's my biggest memory of the GameCube growing up is my one neighbor had it, and they had Mario Strikers, which is one of my favorite. So we would do 4-player 2v2 Strikers, and I just remember screaming, like we were yelling when people would score. Dude, it was so much fun. But man, it's 4-player. Man. And I just love like the title, the intro screen.
It was a really cool console, and again, I wasn't way into it when my brother first got it, but I slowly, because my brother's 4 years younger than me, so there was always like, hey Wes, can you come help me with this part? And I'd jump into a part of a game, I had no idea where he was, and I would try helping him get through it, and he was becoming quite the gamer himself at the time, so it was a lot of fun seeing him get way into that. And I also liked that he had it so he wouldn't want to play my PS2 as much, so it was kind of twofold. But where I dove into the GameCube was when I was in college, and the next, the PS3, 360, so and I got almost the majority of our collection at that time.
Damn.
I got in really, really cheap on the GameCube. This black one was actually the first GameCube that I bought. I got it super cheap, and I don't have a lot of the receipts, but guys, I was getting some of the dingers for $5, $8, $10.
Wow.
And I loaded up on, 15, 20 good solid games around that time frame. And then right back around when we started the channel, I kind of started getting back into it. So to answer the question, where's my nostalgia? There's not much nostalgia for this console, but I absolutely love the console.
Yeah, same for me. I don't have much nostalgia either, but it's my favorite controller ever. What's weird is I love the GameCube so much, but I barely actually play it because we play our GameCube games on the Wii.
Yeah.
So it's like I love it so much.
But
it's a weird thing.
So looking into purchasing one in 2021, we're going to look at some of the things you could purchase, some of the console variants, the accessories, blah, 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 and then we're going to sum things up with kind of giving our advice, if you care to hear it, on should you purchase a GameCube in 2021. So, color variants.
Yes, it's so cool to bring up.
Nintendo was doing very, very well with this with the N64, with all the translucent colors, the solid colors,
the different controllers.
That was a really fun console at the time, just because friends, people would come over and nobody brought the same color controller. It was really fun. They kind of pulled back on that a little bit, I feel like, with this generation, at least in North America, which is predominantly what we're going to cover. And you're seeing the 3 console mainline color variants right here. It launched with only the Indigo.
Oh, really? So the color variants didn't come till later?
No.
Weird.
And then I believe the black variant was next in line, and then the silver variant. Now in North America, we missed out on that awesome spice orange or creamsicle orange.
That's my favorite color, and our buddies Do You Nerd actually have one.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks that get that one and then they mod it so that they can play it, which is an awesome variant. I think it's the sexiest GameCube there is, but it wasn't officially released in the US, and it's not natively made to play North American games. Now there was a couple package deals. I believe one was for Metroid Prime. Came with a black GameCube, and there was a Pokemon purplish color. I can't remember exactly, but it came with the Platinum Silver GameCube.
Ooh, nice.
But they were just the main consoles, but they came with a different, it came with, so it wasn't attached, it came with a different centerpiece.
Like a different disc?
Like a Metroid, and then like a Pokemon one.
That's really cool.
Really what you were getting was this version of the console. And then the other thing that is worth noting is they did differ from having the digital AV out on the back, and we'll get some B-roll of this, but you see on here there's the digital AV out, and then there's your standard analog out, and then later on they removed that from the console. So not a lot of folks know that. So if you're wanting to use that, which a lot of the modern HD connectors and things like that use that digital port, which we'll dive into that, I guess, just right now. One thing that's always been a pain in the ass is we love playing everything on CRT.
Yes.
But the freaking component cables, dude.
Oh my gosh, they are so expensive.
I mean, what are they, 250, 300 now?
They're so expensive, and I think maybe because they were just rare, but weren't they, you could buy them on Nintendo's website at one point?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. You know, you got to go back. That seems like now, like, oh, well, everybody could get them. Man, back in the early aughts, not everybody was online, and ordering stuff online wasn't a common thing like it is now. And if you really look at this image, there's only the green, blue, and red on these component cables. So the audio has got to come from the analog source on the back of these consoles. And there's a special chip in the end of that makes it very hard to replicate. So there were no third-party companies that got in on that.
But if you have them, man, your GameCube is beautiful.
It is almost... Man, it's not, but if I ever found them for a decent price, I'd probably pull the pin. This console still looks amazing natively.
Yes, it does.
Through composite, if you're playing on a CRT. I always think back to that Metal Jesus video when he got the kiosk and he was going back and forth like, man, do I just get a CRT? Because that's how they were in the stores.
Or get a flat screen.
And he plugged it into this JVC TV and he's like, I'm blown away at how good this looks.
Yes.
I think it really speaks to playing some of these consoles, original hardware.
How they were meant to be played.
Yeah, but man, having those component cables, you could run that through a Trinitron, but nobody can afford those. But if you're going to pick one up, I would get one with that digital out.
Yes,
so
that's a good recommendation.
Component cables were an accessory. They're not one that's really affordable at this time. You've got the color variants. You had your standard controllers, which mimicked the color variants of the consoles.
And it's so cool because it's like the N64, because you can have 4 players and all different colors. And
now, this is one thing I don't know. I think you could buy that Orange Spice colored controller.
In America?
Because I've seen them around.
Weird.
Way more than I see the console.
Well,
so you could buy it like as an extra controller, but there was never the console released of that color.
Is the GameCube region locked?
Yes.
So, yeah, and the controller doesn't matter, so that's probably why, you know?
I don't know. I think they released that color. I can't recall seeing it in the stores, but I think they did. Then you have the Wavebird controller, which is, for the time, it was the best wireless controller you could get, and it's highly collectible. We don't own one. We're fortunate to have, I think, 5 or 6 tight-sticked GameCube controllers. Do we want a Wavebird? Yes.
They are so nice.
Will we pay the $50-$60 to get a good one? No.
No.
But they are nice. So if we found one on the cheap, we would keep it, but we're not going to spend the cheddar to get one because it's just, we've got a couple like controller extension cords.
And our room's so small, we don't need that.
One major accessory that is climbed in price a little bit. I'm not saying you have to do it because a lot of people can emulate Game Boy games, but the Game Boy player.
We just recently got one.
Yeah, we got this from a good friend of the channel, Chris James T85. Him and I worked out a deal. He got an N64. I got this bad boy. But you can play Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance games, Game Boy Color games.
It's so cool, and especially back in the day, that was huge.
Yeah. So if you're looking and picking that up, there is a unique twist to it. You have to have
the disc.
Yes. So sometimes you'll find the players or you'll find the disc. I think the disc is more valuable than the player, but you've got to have them together, working in perfect harmony to get it to play the games, which is kind of odd. But if you see one out in the wild, just know you got to get the freaking disc. So of the accessories we've mentioned so far, I would go probably standard controller. If you really want to play your Game Boy games on the TV and you don't have a way to do that through emulation, that could be a good option for you. I think if you're a Game Boy collector and you're a traditionalist, that's probably a good way to go.
Another thing that I want to bring up is the network adapter, which we've already talked about.
Yeah.
A lot of people collect those, and it's fun for LAN parties. It's fun for doing double dash.
Yeah.
But we already mentioned it's not worth. It's like what, 3 games and the online. So it's cool to have. We don't have one, but we want one.
We've kicked around the idea because we do LAN parties all the time, and I think you can you do 16 players on double dash?
16 because 2 per cart.
Yeah.
We were in some tournaments at a con one time. I was like, man, I want it, but it's so you need 4 of them.
It's worth mentioning. We almost got first place.
Yeah.
We got second.
So
let's not talk about that. But we're pretty good at double dash. But yeah, that is a cool one. And then you've got the Game Boy Advance link cables. The game that stands out to me, I think there is a Final Fantasy game as well, but we played the
Zelda
Link 4 Swords.
Yeah, Zelda 4 Swords, which is so cool.
Yeah, so there's people playing on the TV, there's people playing on the Game Boy Advance.
And the game goes back and forth.
We played 4-player with Do You Nerd. It was so much freaking fun. The feasibility of having this, you'd need to have a really good setup. So like in 2021, if you didn't have all the stuff to do that, it's
going to be expensive.
That's a long road to hoe to get to be able to do that. Not that the cables are super expensive, but then to get 2 Game Boy Advances and the games and blah, blah, blah.
And that it can only do for one game, I know, for in maybe another game.
I think there's a couple that use it. I know a Final Fantasy does, but the one everybody talks about.
It's only a handful of games. Another cool thing that was on the GameCube was the drums, was the Donkey Kong Congos, or the bongos.
The Donkey Konga. I think there was a couple of those games. We don't own them.
Nope. I've actually never played them.
Not a mainline thing. It's one of those things, like kind of like the Wavebird. If we found a complete set at a garage sale, you guys probably know if you've watched the channel, we do flip and resell to fund our collection. Those would be something we might keep, just if nothing else to dick around with for a little bit and maybe sell down the line. But it's not something I'm actively coveting. Yeah. I think it's one of those we'd play it maybe a few times and then in the closet.
But they are cool.
There was also... Man, you might have to help me here. Is it Mario Party 4, 5, 6, 7? One of them came with the microphone.
Yes.
We'll throw in some freaking screen cap of that.
I've never played with it, and to be honest, Mario Party's fun, but I'm not the biggest fan of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of those deals, though, for collectors. Like, if you're going to get whatever Mario Party that was that came with it, getting the big box version that came with that is a really cool thing. And then the memory cards. Memory cards are pretty cheap. A lot of them are pretty small in regards to, well, not only physically, but size-wise. The number of blocks or memory that are on the card. So you might want to grab a few of those if you're looking into getting into collecting for it. But of all the extra shit we mentioned,
I don't think it's
other than a controller and a memory card. And if you want to play Game Boy games, but you're going to be looking at about $100 for one of these.
Which is crazy.
I don't know that it's really worth that unless you can get a good deal or a trade. Like I was able to do, we have an extra N64. Chris James, he's like, I need a 64. And I'm like, I need a GameCube player. Let's work something out, dude. But we wouldn't have spent $100.
I feel like the tone of is going to follow the rest of the episode. Let's talk about some games.
Yeah,
so obviously the GameCube library is pretty sweet. There's a lot of amazing games. I've already mentioned Strikers. That's one of my favorite games, one of my favorite GameCube games of all time. I think that's a must-own game, but it's a pricey game.
So this is where this episode, I kind of feel like takes a turn. Because getting into the console, whatever color variant, comparatively to the rest of the generation, is relatively affordable and cheap. I mean, yes, you can find them in the wild for dirt cheap sometimes, but you're probably looking at that $40 to $65 range for the console, which is like, you're probably watching like, that ain't horrible.
Yeah. Now the
games. The market has gotten out of control, and it's honestly
not even fun.
Dude, if we didn't have some of these games, I don't think we'd pay the price.
No, and we've even gone through our collection and gotten rid of some diggers just because the market's going crazy. Like, it's like, okay, we love this game, but when was the last time we played it? Let's sell it and buy something that we are going to play now. Dude, the market, I don't know what's going on. It's just insane.
I think it's two things. I think it's kind of a coefficient of the low install base. You know, any console you look at that has a low install base, and I'm looking at really like sub 20 million.
Yeah.
Now this is slightly over that. But then you factor in that it's a fairly low install base, and you factor in that it's got Nintendo's name on it, which is why I think if you look at this deal here, a Dreamcast had a low install base, highly collectible. And that's why when we talk about the Wii U, we get so passionate about it. Like, if you want a Wii U, get it now. Low install base, Nintendo's name, follow the trail, the history. But the games have gotten out of control. I'd like to talk about some of our favorite games on the console that are exclusive. And we'll throw up price charting prices down in the corner below. But it's hard to say, go out and get these. Because, Mario Kart Double Dash.
That's one of my favorite Mario Kart games.
It's amazing.
2-player per kart, man.
It's not my favorite Mario Kart game, but it's up there, and I could maybe be swindled with a few drinks to say that it is. But I do love it, but the price has gotten a little outlandish. I think we're north of 50 now for that game.
And then another staple, I think it was a launch title for the GameCube.
Yeah.
Luigi's Mansion, which I know there's a second and a third one, but man.
That first one.
It's a perfect game.
There's something about the charm of that game. When we played that, dude, I've played it like each of the last 3 or 4 years, every year, and I just love the game.
It's so freaking awesome. And then I already mentioned Strikers. It's one of the. I'm not even a fan of soccer, and it's just a fantastic arcade sports game.
They perfected the simplicity in that game.
Yes.
The next game in the series, which happened to be on the Wii, was like, it's cool, But they did way too much shit with it.
It's too chaotic.
Mario Strikers, one of the best arcade sports games ever made.
Speaking of Mario Strikers, I got to bring up all the other Mario sports games. Dude, they're so much fun. You got freaking tennis, golf, baseball. Dude, they're all so much fun.
It was so great, and it was like a capsule in time because they were okay after this, but like, dude, this is where it was going on for Mario Sports.
It's incredible.
F-Zero. This is the last entry in the F-Zero series, F-Zero GX, and I think it's probably the best. I love that game.
It's so much fun. I think it's probably the best F-Zero game.
Yeah.
And then Eternal Darkness, what a fantastic...
Scary as shit.
It's a fantastic game. That game is also super pricey. And then you got freaking Super Smash Bros. Melee, which, the first time I played Melee... Yeah, I was like, what is this? Remember Smash Bros. On the N64? And then Melee came out and you're like, what the...
And I'm kicking myself. Do you remember we were game hunting with Captain Algebra, and Captain told me, he's like, dude, just get it. There was a CIB copy of Smash Bros. For $45 at that store. And Captain even told me, dude, you might want to get that. You're going to regret not getting that. I didn't get it because I'm a cheapskate, and now this game's, it's north of 50, probably north of 60 at this point. We have Smash Ultimate, so I'm like kind of okay.
Yeah, because Smash Ultimate's badass, but back in the day, Melee was like, holy crap.
Mario Sunshine. Amazing game. I think it gets shit on. I would rather play Sunshine than Mario 64. Hot take.
Well, it's crazy. It went from Mario 64 to like the crazy upgrade from the N64 to the GameCube. It's just graphically and just game-wise, Sunshine is a fantastic Mario game.
You know, this game prior to the 3D All-Stars coming out was hovering in that $55 to $65 range. I don't know that 3D All-Stars has impacted its price. I haven't looked.
I guess I haven't looked either.
But I know at one point here in recent times it was really expensive. And then these next two games aren't super expensive, but the Rogue Leader, Rogue Squadron 2 and 3.
Yes, those games, they're amazing.
We're big fans of shooters. We're big fans of Star Wars. I know the games that everybody talks about as Knights of the Old Republic. Yes. For what I like to play, which I'm not saying I don't like RPGs, but anymore I don't have the time to play RPGs. I would rather play these Rogue Squadron games. Dude, I love both of them.
And they look amazing.
They do.
Still,
Fantastic.
dude. They're so much fun.
And while we're talking about favorite games on the console, I can't, anytime I have an excuse to talk about Metal Gear. Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes.
Yes.
Can't recommend that you go out and buy it because it's so damn expensive. This game's like notching up there to about $100. But man, when this came out, it was Metal Gear Solid 1 redone in Metal Gear Solid 2 graphics, which I'm obsessed with the art style of Metal Gear Solid 2.
It's mind-blowing.
They took some liberties with some of the voice acting and story parts, but not enough to make me like not love this and prefer playing this as my version of Metal Gear Solid 1. And then I've always loved, even from 64, but Wave Race, Blue Storm,
great.
I've always loved the freaking water physics in the Wave Race games, and this one was just the next one in the series, and it's freaking amazing.
And you can't forget to talk about another Nintendo IP, Star Fox, man. You got Star Fox Adventures and Star Fox Assault, both great Star Fox games.
And it was cool because you kind of, in these, you kind of change the mold, and you got to play more as Fox McCloud as far as like getting out and meandering around, and more of an adventure than
instead of a spaceship.
So it was kind of like, man, I never knew they were like this. And so those are pretty awesome games. Those ones aren't too bad. Those are about 25 to 30 a piece.
Still,
anyway,
still
we're still getting up there in a lot of these.
Those are just a handful of games, dude.
In no particular order.
Yeah, there's so many other GameCube games, and I will bring up third-party games. There's a lot of sweet third-party games on the GameCube, but I'd rather play them on the PS2 or Xbox, especially the Xbox because they look better.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about that in our Xbox playing guide.
Yeah, and there are some games, it's ironic though, there are a few games, it is worth noting, that kind of the graphical or power of the consoles anymore seems to go Xbox, GameCube, PS2. It seems like there's some games on the GameCube that people would prefer to play on the GameCube. So the little guy was small, but he was mighty. But
I think it might be due to the controller, because the controller's perfect.
Yeah, that's a big point. But the current market has gotten out of control. The spikiness of it has just been kind of unworldly, and I didn't really see it coming, and it happened really freaking fast. Ooh. That's kind of where this episode kind of maybe takes the doom and gloom term. What's the future of the console? Being a Nintendo console, I don't think we're a long ways off from seeing a cliff or a dip, I feel like.
It just keeps going up.
Yeah.
It keeps raising in price. It's just low install base is affecting that. It's just insane. And since it's a Nintendo thing, I think collectors are buying it up really expensive, and they're not going to get rid of it. So it's going to be probably a couple generations probably.
And disc games are harder to keep clean and minty. Comparatively, like a cartridge, man, you can do a lot of work on a cartridge to bring it back to life. Discs, if they're dicked, they're dicked.
Yeah, they're done.
shit. Shinola.
I also think, we're just now, I feel like, kind of seeing, and I'm not saying we're seeing a cliff on the NES, but we're starting to see the market simmer and mellow a little bit. And we're so far out from that console that came out in 85 to the console that came out in the early aughts. I mean, I think it's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while, and now the question is, should you purchase one in 2021?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say no. Okay, this is like one of those raise your own mail type of situations, because like if you really want one and you have the cash and you don't care about that kind of stuff, then absolutely, dude, I love the GameCube. The games are awesome.
Yeah.
But for the average gamer, for the average collector, it's not. I mean, I don't think it's worth it, man.
Kind of why. It all depends on what type of collector you are.
Yes,
That's why I think you said read your own mail. For us, we collect on a budget, and we want to get the most bang for our buck. And I don't feel like we're missing out. Now, I'm speaking from a place where I've got 15 to 20 games that I really wanted on the console. There's a ton more that I do want. But man, I could go so much further with my spend on the OG Xbox or the PS2 if I'm really diving into this generation. Another console I love from this generation, it was the first console I ever bought with my own money, is the Sega Dreamcast.
Which is iconic.
Guys, I haven't bought a Dreamcast game in like a year and a half to 2 years.
Because it's so pricey.
Same reason applies. Not because I don't like the Dreamcast, but from a collector standpoint, from the fun of going out and hunting, from being able to get good deals on stuff, and making your dollar go the furthest. Because if you're watching this and you're in our age range, the mid-20s to mid-30s, you gotta stop spending all your disposable income on video games. So it's kind of like, what can I get into on the cheap and have fun and relive some good memories? And I just don't think now is the time. And honestly, looking out on the horizon,
it's gonna be a
while before I think getting into this. Now, if you find one on the cheap and get a few games, but it's just a slippery slope, because you know how it goes collecting.
Yeah, you get just a little taste of it, and you're like, I want the full.
It's a rabbit hole. Then you're making drunken eBay purchases on Saturday night, and then come Wednesday, you're like, well, when did I order this?
How am I gonna
for
pay
$85 for Smash Bros? So I just know at least how a lot of collectors go. A couple is never enough.
No, yeah.
I think it's a very, very slippery slope. I think it's a market that is not going to adjust for some time. I think it's only going to continue to inflate. I just think there's so many better ways right now. You could collect for the Wii U, the PS2, the OG Xbox, even NES is starting to mellow
the
a little bit.
360, the PS3, the Wii. There's you could collect for so many other consoles and just play those. Be patient.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while. I mean,
and you'll find games here and there.
Oh, yeah.
You will. We just did a hunting episode where I think we probably found 10 GameCube games.
And we found Pikmin. That's a dinger. And finding them in the wild is tough. They're so expensive. If you're going to do it, I recommend not buying games and just buying the consoles. Yeah. Because that's reasonably priced.
Yeah.
Everything else. What's crazy is the GameCube is still so relevant. Because on the Switch, you can use GameCube controllers. Yep. The Wii plays GameCube games. It's like...
The Smash Melee is still a tournament game, over.
It's crazy how relevant it still is. And it's 20 years old.
And it was the third worst selling console of the generation. It's
like Nintendo's like, oh, we know this is the best controller. Yeah. We know this is the best.
It's like its legacy is way better than it was at the time.
I know.
It's crazy.
Just growing.
It's like the rear view mirror for the GameCube is a freaking magnifying glass because things are just going out there. But yeah, it's not that we don't like the console, guys. I just think there's more you can do with your money. A lot of easier consoles to collect for. So again, that's just two random Joe Blow's advice. You got to read your own mail. And speaking of reading our own mail, what do we think of this beer?
Mine is almost gone. That's because we're sharing one bottle.
Yeah.
This is the White Chocolate Raspberry Imperial White Milk Stout by Southern Tier Brewing Company. This comes in at 10%. I think our buddy BK sent this to us.
He did,
and
yes. So gracias, BK.
The nose is incredible.
I don't even know, a white milk stout. I have zero experience in that.
Zero experience. This is just... It's exactly what it says it is, guys. But it's just so smooth, so sweet, so delicious, This is a delicious, perfect beer.
I mean, somebody's having a little too much fun with this, but I got to agree. It's just epic.
It's just incredible, but it's one of those beers, for how good and sweet it is, it's a slow drinker, and I probably would only have one.
Yeah.
Because it is super sweet. Like that chocolatey and raspberry taste is a little too much, but for one, it's perfect.
Yeah. I think it's great.
It's so good.
I don't think I can add much to it. I think it's well balanced. To your point, it's very sweet, but it's not one of those beers that's nauseating or like too rich. It is rich, but it's just like that perfect. It's just fantastic, and I've never had a beer like this.
It's so freaking good, and I would never guess that this is 10%. It does not have any burn at all. This is a dangerous, delicious beer.
All right, guys. So there you have it. As much as it pains us to say, because we freaking love the GameCube, we can't recommend getting out and starting to collect for it if you're starting in 2021.
Yeah.
If you've sniffed around the Got-G Playground, one thing we really love to do is let you guys know how to collect on the cheap. And if that's one of our missions,
we can't endorse this.
It's just really hard to say, hey, you should really dive into the GameCube, because you're going to freaking damn near go broke trying to collect for this thing, and then you're going to look and be like, well, shit, I could add a freaking 100 Xbox games on the Xbox for $250. It's just, we love it.
You would spend so much money and you'd have a library of 3 games.
Yeah.
It's tough because this is the first buying guide we've done where we say, hey, don't buy it, but we love it. Like, it's such a...
It's just kind of like,
it sucks.
It's kind of how I feel with the Dreamcast and the Saturn. Now, we have a Dreamcast, we have a Saturn. Decent Dreamcast collection, very small Saturn collection. But I just have came to the conclusion the window has closed for me.
Yep.
I missed the freaking window. But...
shame on us.
That sucks. And I could roll around in my sorrows and be like, can
I go back?
I can't collect anymore. But there's so many other wide open freaking windows where people are throwing shit out and you can grab it for dirt cheap. That why spin your wheels on what you can't get when there's so much out there that you can get? And I would nudge you in those directions. As much as I hate to say it, because I love you, man. I freaking love you. But you're expensive. And your games are a son of a bitch. All right.
You're getting emotional.
We appreciate you guys tuning in and subscribing to the channel, and we wish you all the best in your game collecting endeavors in 2021 and beyond. And we'll see you next time right here on Gaming Off the Grid.
I know.
You know, it's crazy. It's like the rear view mirror for the Wii. It's like the rear view mirror for the GameCube. It's a very impressive brew.
It's like so rich and sweet.
So good. Sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and let's take a look at the Nintendo. Fuck. Believe it or not, the market for the Nintendo Wii is on the rise. Today's episode serves as a call to action. Now is the time is now to purchase a Nintendo Wii in 2020. What are we drinking today?
Today we're drinking Coconut Edition B-Bomb by Fremont Brewing Company. It's a barrel-aged Imperial Stout.
All right, you know the drill. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you never miss an upload. And sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and welcome to the Nintendo Wii Buying Guide.
I'm Gabo.
I'm Mikey. I'm Rifo.
I'm Ricky. I'm Ricky. This is Pixel Game Squad. You're watching Gaming Off the Grid, possibly the greatest channel on earth.
Yeah,
well,
the greatest.
Besides GameSack, Game Chasers, Retro Liberty, Chase After the Right Price,
both.
Russ Lyman,
Definitely.
the other top 20 we talked about. What?
Yeah.
Definitely better than Pixel Game Squad.
Oh yeah, they're trash.
Yeah, they're not good.
Looks like we're getting new people on the squad.
So here's Pixel Game Squad. Bye. What is this?
All right, here we go. This episode is more of a call to action for you retro gamers, you video game collectors. The market for the Nintendo Wii is starting to skyrocket. We're starting to see things that happened kind of with the GameCube not that long ago.
Which scares me because the Wii, like a year ago, everything was dirt cheap. We loved the Wii, so we were just picking up, and now all of a sudden, everything's skyrocketing. Like, we just sold a copy of Wii Sports, which was a free game that came with all the Wiis.
Everybody has it.
For $30.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. It doesn't even come in a real case.
Yeah.
So prices are going way up. So if you want to get a Wii, or you're nostalgic and you got rid of your Wii and you want to get it again, now is the time. So let's jump in to the different variants of the Nintendo Wii. Obviously, there's a vertical one, there's a horizontal one, and then there's the Wii Mini. I would recommend getting the vertical one and get first gen because it is backwards compatible with the Nintendo GameCube, and you can use a GameCube controller.
Yeah, so you get way more bang for your buck. So when Robert says vertical and horizontal, he's really referring to the placement of the logo.
Yes.
That's going to be your tell if it's one of those Gen 1 that you can play the GameCube games on. They started later making a console that looks almost identical to this, but the Wii is printed in a horizontal fashion.
Yeah. I mean, you can obviously lay this down horizontally, but you know,
Yeah, and then the towards the end they released that red and black mini console. It looks really cool. It's honestly aesthetically probably the most pleasing version of the console.
It looks so good.
Man, there's no component.
Yes.
There's no Wi-Fi, so you can't get online even though the Wii shop is closed.
And there's only one USB port, which is weird because the Wii has 2, I think, or 3.
Yeah.
Like it's weird.
For all you hackers out there, there is no SD card slot on the Wii Mini. So honestly, I would just steer clear of that unless you're a huge collector and you want to have it in your collection. So, moral of the story, the console you probably want to go with, most bang for your buck, is the original vertical standing version 1 of the Wii.
It looks so good. And speaking of hacking, I know it's illegal, but the original Wii with an SD card is so easy to hack. You can put so many ROMs and stuff on it. Not saying that we do that, but it is possible and it's super easy. So that's another awesome thing about the Wii.
Yeah, for sure. So the console itself can be got relatively cheap. If you're going eBay pricing, we're looking right around that $50 mark. But out at yard sales and garage sales, folks still haven't really caught on that this thing is really starting to pop. You should be able to find one $20 or less all day long. If you just hunt and grind, and you'll find one. All right, long day hunting here and finally picked something up worth noting. We got a Wii for $20, the original, the hackable Wii that's backwards compatible with the GameCube. Complete in box Wii Fit, probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 games. Some of them are shovelware, but there is a Mario Kart in there, Mario Party 8 and 9, and the Olympics game, the Sonic and Mario game. So pretty jacked up.
And if you've never had a Wii before, most people probably know this, but if you're finding these at garage sales, yard sales, make sure that when you buy a Wii, it comes with all the parts. It comes with the power block, the video cable, and the sensor bar. A lot of people forget to put that sensor bar in there, and then when you get it home, you're like, oh, I can't even use
what
it.
What do I do now? And you also want to make sure you get a Wiimote and a nunchuck. So that's kind of if you're out picking it up in the wild and you want to get it home to play. You want to make sure those are all there. If they're not, that could be a negotiating point to get the price down a little lower because you can get all those things relatively cheap online, and that's on you to find those things, but they're out there, I promise you. So the console you should be able to get relatively cheap. Let's talk about some accessories for the Wii because this console really is very versatile in my opinion. So we talked about the Wiimote. There is a version of the Wiimote that I think is a little bit better. If you ever see the one that has this arc below the Wii logo that says Wii Motion Plus inside, these are just a little more responsive. We like to play with this one.
They're just a little bit better. The other ones work, but if you find those at a decent price, they just work a little bit better. So it comes with composite cables, but you can get component and S-Video, and that just makes it look a little bit better. It doesn't look terrible with composite cables, but sometimes it's fun to upgrade it.
It does look fantastic though with the component or S-Video. The colors just really pop. The Wii definitely had just a great color palette for sure. Then some other side peripherals. You should be able to get a Wii steering wheel for really cheap.
Yeah, that's awesome for racing games, Mario Kart, great for the family. And then if you're a real gamer and want a real controller, most people don't like the Wiimote. They have the Wii Classic controller.
This bad boy.
Yes.
Right here.
That guy is awesome. It feels like a real controller. You just plug it into the regular Wiimote, and it just plays. It's great.
It's got a form factor close to the Super Nintendo controller. You get your joysticks. There is another variant of this that came, I would call it the Wii Classic Pro, probably. It has like the handles that you hang on to.
Freaking sweet.
Those are really comfortable in the hand. So.
And then, obviously, we talked about the first gen GameCube controller. That's how we love playing our first gen, any game, because the GameCube controller is fantastic. And then, the biggest things I would recommend, and I think we would both recommend, is get a light gun for it.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of light gun games, we did a whole episode on that, but the Nyko Perfect Shot on the Wii, fantastic accessory.
We have talked about that peripheral at nauseum on the channel, but it is awesome, and if you like rail shooters, light gun games, whatever you want to call them, the Wii, that's kind of a hidden gem thing about the Nintendo Wii. We'll put a link to that video up above because that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother rabbit hole we can go down. We'll talk about a few of those games coming up, but that's an awesome accessory as well.
So now, let's jump in to the games. I think this is important.
This is the whole point, really, of this buying guide or this episode, because the games and the value is starting to skyrocket. Robert just brought up that Wii Sports, we have sold multiple of them over the last month and a half for $24.99 and above.
Which is insane.
Everybody had that game. Your new Super Mario Brothers Wii, your Mario Galaxy 2s, Mario Kart, all those games are climbing. They're getting to a point where cheap collectors like us, they're getting almost out of reach. Paying $30 for Mario Kart on the Wii.
Yeah, it's like,
The crazy part is the Wii had such a large install base. I don't know where this drive in the market is coming from so fast. I don't know if people being locked up because of COVID.
I think it's people locked up. Nostalgia's kicking in because the Wii is about 14 years old, so the young kids that grew up with it are like teenagers or young adults, and they're like, okay, I want to play this again. They want to get active.
They've got that disposable income too because they're making maybe have their own jobs.
So a lot of those main titles are kind of expensive, and if you want to get a Wii on the cheap, there are some great hidden gems, I would say, that are a little bit cheaper.
Obviously, the mainline games that we kind of mentioned, you guys probably are well aware of those. So what we're going to rattle off for you here are some games on the cheap, most of them under $20 to $15 range and less, that you can really pack out your shelf and your Wii collection pretty decently with these games. So the first one I want to talk about is Resident Evil 4. Games under $10 all day long. One of the best versions of the game. A lot of gamers out there say it is the definitive version of the game. I don't necessarily believe that or feel that way myself, but it is an awesome version of the game.
Yeah, it's a fantastic version of the game, and going back to the light guns, House of the Dead 2 and 3 Return.
Yes.
It's a great compilation of 2 and 3, and that's under $20. It's a great light gun compilation.
Just point at the screen and shoot them zombies. It's hard to have a bad time when you're playing that. Another game on the cheap that kind of blows my mind that the market hasn't popped out yet is Kirby's Epic Yarn.
Oh, that's a fantastic game. It's a great co-op game.
It's beautiful.
It's a great family game.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And it's just unique. There's some unique things that happen in that game that I've just never seen in any other platformer.
And speaking of great family games, Batman the Brave and the Bold. We actually did an episode just on this game a couple years ago. And it's a great game for the family. It's super cheap.
Side-scrolling beat 'em up.
It's fantastic.
If you've got a youngster that's starting to get into cartoons and Batman, it's a great game. Chronic Spartan, I think he said it was the first game him and his son beat together.
Is so awesome.
It is the perfect game for that, and you can get that game literally $6, $7, $8 all day long. Ghostbusters is pretty cheap. Mad World. Now this is more of a mature rated game, but it's black and white, but the blood is red.
It's
comic
so
book style.
Cool. Yeah, so that's under $20.
Smash Brothers fans.
Yeah, Smash Brothers. So this is under $20, which is weird because all the mainline games are going up. It could be because the new Smash is out on the Switch.
I think it's because people either want to play Melee or they want to play the new Smash games, and Brawl's in that middle ground.
But Brawl is fantastic. It's great.
So good.
You can play with all the different controller types, nunchuck, Wiimote, GameCube. It's great.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic, and you can get that game literally under $15 all day. Wario Smooth Moves. You want to talk about a good party game, a good family game?
And I think this game, there's some game modes in Wario Smooth Moves. What is it? Up to 8 players?
Yeah.
Up to 10 players? I don't remember the exact number, but a lot of people can play this game. It's so much fun.
It's one of those games, too, that doesn't get mentioned very often, and I would rather play this game all day long over Mario Party.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love this game.
It's just
so
a
many
bunch of mini
fun mini games, plucking the nose hairs with the Wiimote. I mean, that type of stuff is just good, stupid fun. Punch-Out. You guys know I'm a huge Punch-Out fan. You're currently training. He's trying to take down Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson isn't in this version of the game. But this is a new imagination of Punch-Out. A lot of people say it's a remake. I don't call it a remake. It's just really the third game in the series. There's only one new character, however, but it's a game initially I didn't like, but I've kind of come to like it a little bit. It's a lot of fun, and you can get it for really cheap.
It looks really cool. And then Conduit. That's a really cool hidden gem, and that's under $20.
If you like first-person shooters, you might want to try that one out.
Yep.
That is a great game. I think that is the ones that we wanted to talk about that are nice and on the cheap.
I mean, obviously, there's probably a ton more that we missed. The Wii has a huge library, but be careful, because huge library means lots of shovelware. The Wii does have a lot of shovelware, but like the PS2 that has a lot of shovelware, It has a great variety of games. There's shooters, there's beat 'em ups, there's sports games,
RPGs,
there's all kinds of games for the Wii, so you can find your style and your favorite genre on the Wii, and hopefully they're cheap.
So many of the games we suggested, I feel like are games that true gamers would enjoy. The reason we bring those up is for both of us, we kind of gave up on the Wii and didn't really give it a fair shake back in the day. And just recently we've had people in the comment section saying, oh, the GameCube was the last console from Nintendo. Everything else since then's been gimmicky. Yes, it's been gimmicky, but don't sleep on the Wii. These games we're bringing up are games that any gamer can really get into.
Yes, and you don't have to use the motion on some of them. You can find ways around that if you don't like the motion.
One other game that is a mainline title, though, that you can get on the cheap, which surprises me, is Mario Galaxy. Mario Galaxy 2's climbing, but Galaxy's staying relatively sweet, and it may be one of the best three-dimensional Mario games ever made.
Beautiful. Captain Algebra was recently streaming it, and it was so much fun to watch him play it.
Yeah,
it's a great game.
Very unique as well. So, speaking of unique, Joe Wallace only sends us some of the best brews. Yeah. What do you think of this beer? Fremont Brewing. We don't get a lot of access to their stuff.
No, we don't.
This is the B-Bomb, the coconut variant.
2019 edition. Barrel-aged Imperial Stout with a hint of coconut. So obviously, we're filming this, it's midsummer, it's July, it's hot as balls outside. Yeah. Not really a big fan of stouts when it's hot because it's so heavy.
Yeah.
But holy crap, this is incredible. It's definitely an Imperial Stout, but it's not that heavy.
No.
There's a heavy taste, but it's not like heavy in your stomach.
Yeah.
It has a incredible taste. It's really smooth. The coconut, coconut is just enough.
Just feathered in there.
Yeah, it's not overbearing. You can kind of smell the coconut on the nose. Man, this is a fantastic beer.
This is a great brew. Fremont clearly knows what they're doing. It was one of our favorite beers that we had. Was it the Rusty Nail that we had in 2019? Yeah, this beer's great. This is everything that I look for in a barrel-aged Imperial Stout. I'm sure you as well.
Yes.
This isn't going to kick your ass by any means. It's just a good, smooth Imperial Stout. If you're a coconut fan, Imperial Stout fan, this is a must. I love this beer.
It's so freaking good, and everything we've had from Fremont is incredible. Yep. They always come in these fancy-ass bottles, so if you ever get a chance, try some beers from Fremont and try and get a hold of the B-Bomb. I'm guessing it's like a yearly release that's somewhat different, but man, 2019 edition, coconut edition, so good.
Very, very good. Thanks again, Joe Wallace, for the brew. Guys, now is the time. The time is now. Purchasing a Wii in 2020. I really think this episode should serve as a call to action. If you think you're ever going to want to get into the Nintendo Wii, the market this last year has done things more rapidly than I've seen for a console in a long time. I really think 2 to 3 years out from now, we're going to be looking at GameCube type pricing for the Nintendo Wii.
Which is going to be insane.
It is crazy to me because of the install base. I don't quite understand why it's happening, but I think we need to get ahead of the curve if you think you're ever going to want to add the Nintendo Wii to your collection. It's got very versatile ways to hook it up. You've got composite, S-Video, component, and they do make little HD adapters to it, or HDMI adapters, I should say, to be able to play it on the modern TVs. I think you got to get out there and grab a Wii. Grab it while you still can.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic console. I freaking love it. The Wii gets overlooked so much by retro gamers, but it is so much fun.
Yeah, in the comment section below, let us know what is your favorite Nintendo Wii game of all time, and maybe a game that gamers just overlooked and didn't give a true chance to, because I feel like you mentioned, that happened a lot with the Nintendo Wii. Guys, if you have any questions about any of the things we covered in this episode, hit us up on social media, drop a comment in the comment section below. We would be happy to help you out in your adventure to collecting for the Nintendo Wii. We always appreciate you tuning in and subscribing to the channel. Keep gaming, keep drinking. We'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Off the Grid.
It comes with the power block. It comes with the power block, the AV.
It is time to buy the Nintendo Wii.
Coconut Edition B-Bomb by Fremont Brewing Company. It's an Imperial... Imperial Stout, aged in bourbon. Barrel-aged Imperial Stout. Did we get it?
I think we got it.
That's pretty good.
I think we got her.
Man, too bad this is empty.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, let's try this fucking beer.
Let's give her a fucking whirl.
First
Joe
one
Wallace
today.
gave us this, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Got a good. You can taste the coconut. You can smell the coconut.
God, I hate her job.
Yeah, dude.
Fucking, it's rough.
It's rough.
So much stress, dude.
So much.
The Nintendo Wii U has one of the lowest install bases of any Nintendo home console. In today's episode, we're going to walk you through purchasing a Wii U in 2020 and let you know, is it worth it? What are we drinking?
Today we're drinking Strawberry Chocolate Cheesecake by Barntown Brewing Company. It's a strawberry chocolate pastry sour.
Sounds delicious. You know the drill. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you never miss an upload. And sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and welcome to the Nintendo Wii U Buying Guide.
Coming out the rear. Now I want you to sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and enjoy this episode of Gaming Off the Grid.
All right, here we go. Purchasing a Wii U in 2020. Is it worth it? There are so many great games on the console, many of which have been ported over to the Nintendo Switch.
So sad.
Which make a lot of people, I think, feel like the Wii U has lost its value, but we don't really feel that way.
No, the Wii U is fantastic. It's crazy because the Wii U is only 8 years old. It was only in production for 5 years and then got discontinued.
Yeah.
It only sold about 13.5 million units, which is one of the worst selling Nintendo consoles ever. Which
I think
sucks.
it is for home consoles.
That's crazy because Nintendo usually does it really well.
Yeah.
I just think a lot of people got confused by the branding of it. It's very confusing, and everything's being ported to the Switch, so people are like, I don't really need one.
Yeah, I think.
But I think you do.
Initial jump was like, well, what is it? Is it just like a souped up version of the Nintendo Wii? They didn't really know that it was a brand new console.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this bad boy and the variants and the games and things we think you need to pick up in 2020 before it's too late. So there are two mainline versions of the console. There's an 8 gig and then like a deluxe 32 gig.
32 gig, and they're both nice. I would recommend the 32 gig because there's more storage, but they're both really pricey since the console is discontinued. We've done a lot of buying guides in the past. This is going to be our most expensive buying guide because the console itself is getting expensive. But now is the time because it's just going to keep going up.
Yeah.
So I would pull the trigger if you ever want one or think you ever will. Now is the time.
Yeah, the 32 gig is a black console. The 8 gigabyte version is a white console. Both are super sexy. I kind of like the white one, but I do like that larger hard drive. So why purchase a Wii U if all the games have been ported over, all the good games, if you will, over to the Nintendo Switch? First off, there's still some stragglers that haven't been ported over.
I know there's a lot of rumors of all these games that they're slowly coming to the Switch, but there's so many that haven't and I don't think ever will. So let's start with that. Splatoon.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah,
awesome game.
Which is awesome. I know the second one's on the Switch, but the first one's pretty incredible.
And then one of the best party games I think ever is Nintendo Land.
Oh, Nintendo Land is fantastic, and
so
a lot
fun.
of people sleep on that game too.
Yeah.
Then you got Star Fox Zero, Pikmin 3, which here's what's weird about that is there's rumors of that coming to the Switch, the deluxe version.
I love that game.
That's how they get you to buy it again, by just calling it the deluxe version.
And you mentioned Star Fox Zero. A lot of people hate on that game. I kind of like it. I think it's a beautiful game. It's fun to play co-op.
It's a fun game. And if you're a fan of survival horror, sadly, it never got a physical release in the US. But Fatal Frame, Maiden of Black Water, is only for the Wii U. And it's really cool.
Yeah, the Fatal Frame games are scary as shit. You can still get a digital download of it while the Wii U store is still open. There's a zombie game on it called Zombie U. I think GameStop was like giving those games away basically not that long ago.
That game's really fun.
I like that game a lot. It does have like a dated feel a little bit. It didn't really, comparatively to some of the other shooters and stuff that were coming out at the time, or first-person shooters, it didn't maybe stack up from a graphical standpoint, but if you like zombie games, it is a must-play. The other cool thing about the Wii U is I feel like there are several games that were on multiple platforms, but the definitive version of those games, in our humble opinion, resides on the Wii U.
Oh yeah, it does. Starting with one of our favorite games of all time, Axiom Verge. Here's what makes the Wii U so awesome is the tablet. A lot of people are kind of confused by it, but with the tablet, you can have your screen and then your full screen. So in Axiom Verge, you can switch between your weapons. In Batman, the Arkham series, you can switch your tool belts right there. It makes the game so much easier to play.
And in Axiom Verge in particular, it's on all these other consoles, but it's like a 8-bit, 16-bit era type Metroidvania game, so the map is really important. And the other versions, you have to pause it to look at the map. On the Wii U, you just look down and your map is right
there. It makes the game so much easier. Then there's Deus Ex, which is really awesome. I think it's the director's cut on the Wii U. That plays amazing on the Wii U.
Again, that simultaneous screen helps you a ton in that version of the game. It makes it, by far, in my opinion, the best version of that game.
And then if you like beat 'em ups and you're a fan of Zelda Hyrule Warriors, I know that's available on the Switch, I think.
It is,
but you can do 2-player separate screens. So one person's on the big screen, one person's on the tablet. That's awesome.
It is way cool.
That's so
we actually
cool.
did a live stream of it, and it's so neat to each have your own screen respectively, which on the Switch, obviously that changes. It's a great game, and I think the best version, even though it got like a deluxe version on the Switch, is still on the Wii U. It's also worth noting that I think the Wii U has a better online store than the Nintendo Switch.
And I think it has a better online store than the Wii. I know the Wii closed, but the online store is incredible. There was a really cool game called Dr. Luigi. It's an eShop only, and if you're a fan of Dr. Mario, check it out. It's really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of good classics on there that you can just download the full games. Ours is freaking loaded with, I mean, we've got Demon's Crest and the Final Fight games, all that type of stuff.
We got the Angry Video Game Nerd game on our Wii U, which is hilarious, hard as balls.
It is hard, but it's a really fun game. So I think the online shop, while it's still open, it'll be closing down sooner than later, I'm sure of it, but it's right now, in my opinion, still better than the Nintendo Switch online store. So I think there's another win for the Wii U, at least temporarily.
And if you want to get into the Wii U, the library of games isn't that big. I know a lot of them are being ported, but if you're going for complete collections or you're into that kind of stuff, the library is not that big.
Yeah. So we just did a buying guide on the Nintendo Wii, but if you don't have a Nintendo Wii and you opt to get a Wii U, it is backwards compatible with the Nintendo
which is
Wii.
Awesome. It has a sensor bar and everything.
For the Wiimotes and all that good stuff. And then if you don't have a CRT like us old dinosaurs over here, and you've just got a modern, HD TV, it makes playing your Nintendo Wii games a little easier because you can just go right through the HDMI.
Yeah, it's HDMI. It is such a slick console, and we believe that this console is going to go down as the next Sega Saturn.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. The Sega Saturn only sold, I think it was like less than 10 million units.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the worst selling home consoles, and the Wii U is just behind it. I think if you wait and sleep on the Wii U, it's going to be harder and harder and harder and more expensive and more expensive and more expensive. Man, and it's such a fantastic console. I love it so much.
It is. We probably play it more than our Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
Nintendo collectors, if you don't get in on this, I think you're going to be kicking yourself a few years down the road. Where I think this is going to be tougher to collect than, say, the Sega Saturn, which I think is a great comparison, is the screen.
Yes, the tablet's going to be...
How well are these going to hold up over time? Now, these things can take an ass whooping.
Yeah.
But think about this. 10 years from now, given that only 13.5 million or whatever these sold, how many screens are either A, going to have failed, going to have scratches all over them, going to be beat to shit?
They're not going to be in good shape. It's going to be sorry to find a screen, and that's what makes the Wii U so good. I mean, you can still use the console, but without the screen, it's like, oh, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, the tablet is a very cool... I thought it was very innovative. I think the games on the console, there's still enough games there for hardcore gamers. Now, there are plenty of games, don't get us wrong, that don't maximize or optimize the use of the dual screens, but the ones that do,
they get it right.
They do, and it makes them the definitive versions.
Hands down.
It's so hard to play Axiom Verge on the PS4 after we've played it this way on the Wii U. So it makes it for us a must own for multiple reasons, and we've laid that out here in this episode. What do you think about this beer?
Oh my gosh, so we've had a lot of Barntown beers. They've never disappointed us. This is strawberry chocolate cheesecake. It's a pastry sour. So it's a pastry kettle sour brewed with strawberries, cocoa nibs, vanilla, cheesecake, and milk sugar. Holy crap. It's exactly what it says it is. I don't know how they do it. They're magicians or something. This is incredible.
The way that this brewery is able to bring to the glass exactly what it says on the can is second to none. I would say I don't like it as much as the cherry cheesecake one, just because chocolate cheesecakes aren't my favorite type of cheesecake. However, they nailed it with the flavor profile here.
It's incredible. You get that smoothness of the cheesecake, the chocolate flavor, the strawberry. Oh my! It's like a milkshake. It's so creamy, dude. This is so good, and this would be a beer that everyone would love.
I agree with you.
This is a beer for the masses.
This is
so good.
Definitely not one like if you're sitting there watching this saying like, I don't really like sour beers. This is a little different. This is just a really sweet, almost like a dessert beer. Very enjoyable. I would find it very hard to believe that anybody watching wouldn't enjoy this brew.
It's so freaking
I guess
delicious.
if you don't like cheesecake, but this is freaking delicious.
So good.
And you know what else is delicious? The Wii U.
Oh, it's sexy.
We forgot to mention Need for Speed Most Wanted U.
Oh, that's the definitive version of that game.
Yep.
So good.
Yoshi's Woolly World is still exclusive.
How did we forget about that? That game is beautiful. It's great for families. It's just such a fun game.
It is. It is. Low barrier of entry, too. I think it's an easy enough game that, the kiddos can play it as well. Guys, if you can't tell, We love the Wii U. We feel like purchasing one in 2020, it is the time to do it. The market is just going to keep going up. And a lot of the games that have been ported over to the Switch, they're charging full retail price, the $49.99 or whatever it is, and you can get them cheaper than that on the Wii U. We haven't even played Breath of the Wild on the Switch. We only own it on the Wii U, and it plays amazing. It looks gorgeous, and you can get it way cheaper.
And why are we gonna buy it again? We already have it. Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that the Nintendo Switch, my humble opinion, I think you kind of feel the same way, hasn't really differentiated itself enough on its own right. It keeps re-releasing these games. I don't blame Nintendo. If with all those good titles, you want to get them in as many households as you can, and the Wii U did a poor job of that, but it's low install base.
But the Switch is just riding its coattails and taking all the credit for it, because a lot of people think, oh, these are fantastic Nintendo Switch games, and they don't know their ports, you know? The Wii U, that's where they started at, and we freaking love the Wii U. We could talk about it for hours.
If you know, you know. I guarantee you there's going to be people in the comment section that think we're insane, but the ones that have a Wii U are going to be like, thank you for finally saying this. It's so exciting. But guys, get out there, purchase a Wii U if you can. The console price is going up, but a lot of the games are still fairly affordable. Usually we try bringing you these type of episodes and tell you how to get into something on the cheap. From the price of the console, we can't really do that, but some of the games can still be had for a very reasonable price.
And the console's just going to keep going up, so it's as cheap as it's going to be right now.
Anyways, guys, we always appreciate you tuning in and subscribing to the channel. Go grab yourself a Nintendo Wii U and enjoy all the epic games. We'll see you next time right here on Gaming Off the Grid. I would find it very hard to believe that anybody watching wouldn't enjoy this brew.
It's so freaking
I guess if you
delicious.
don't like cheesecake, then that could be a reason.
Well,
but
then you shouldn't be watching the channel. No, I'm just kidding.
But the Wii U, but it's expensive.
Yes, do it now, because it's still going to be worth it from your...
We got to let's just redo everything after this beer review. It's turning into a mess. And sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and let's talk... Fuck.
Oh, you couldn't get to home.
Nope. All right, here we go. Is it worth purchasing a Nintendo Wii U in 2000?
In 2000?
In 2000.
2000, Tony. Oh, my God. Oh.
All right, here we go. Is it worth purchasing a Wii U in 2020? In today's episode, we're going to...
unbox.
We have done buying guides on this channel for almost every console in the game room, with the exception of a few handhelds and the Nintendo Switch.
Yes.
Today, it's the time for the Switch, a little buying guide. We love making these videos.
Oh, they're so fun and they're so informative. The Switch is 6 years old.
It's wild.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Because I remember we got ours when we just started the channel, and it still feels like a new console.
Yeah.
But there's 3 versions of the Switch, which is really cool. I love it. I love the Switch so much.
Yeah, so if you're watching this and you already have a Switch, you may find some things that are beneficial that you didn't know existed, or games or suggestions, things like that. You're like, oh, that could enhance my experience with the Switch. If you've never taken the dive and got a Nintendo Switch, I think there's a lot of meat on the bone for you here. So let's start with the console itself, and we're going to work things backwards. The most recent edition of the Switch is the OLED model, with the improved kickstand.
Yes.
The screen quality is a little bit better, and the docking station has an actual Ethernet cord port. Aside from that, you have the original still. We play our Switch 90% of the time docked.
Yeah.
There's really not much of a difference. It has double the memory.
Yeah, the memory is nice. So the OLED came out October 8th of 2021.
Yeah.
So about 2 years ago, 64 gigabytes of memory. I don't know why it's so small.
Yeah, well,
that's wild to me. The light and the regular, 32 gig. What?
Yeah,
That's so small.
It's not enough. So, that came out in 21. 19, the Switch Lite came out, 2019, which is an ironic console to me. That's not one I would recommend, maybe for a child or something.
Yeah.
Or if you primarily played on the go. Main reason I wouldn't is, yes, you can't dock it, so that's obvious. Let's get that out of the way. But I worry because the Joy-Cons, and we'll talk about these maybe a little bit later, they're not very reliable. And I always think if you had the Switch Lite, I don't know how reliable those are. I'm guessing they're more durable than the standard.
I'm guessing they would have to be. I haven't played a Lite, so I don't know. But
if one of those goes bad,
because it's stuck in.
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, so I play it mostly docked, so the Switch Lite doesn't have any effect on me. But if you travel a lot or you like doing that, maybe Switch Lite is cheaper.
Yeah.
You know, and then I have the original at home that came out in 2017, March 3rd, 32 gigabytes. And I've had it for 5 years, and it still works. It still looks great. It still plays great. Memory's kind of an issue, but other than that, I think the original still is just fine.
Yeah, yep. I think so far, and we haven't experienced issues with the Joy-Cons. That being said, we barely play with the Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
So let's use that to parlay into the controller talk. So out of the box, you get the Joy-Cons, right? We've got some set of pink and green, and then I've got the Splatoon ones. I think you have the red and blue pair, the standard issue. These are neat because they can be used as individual controllers. If you're on the go, it's not ideal. No, but it can get you by in a pinch.
I played Mario Kart and Smash, you know, with the sideways controller, and it's fine, but you're like, I just want a real controller. It kind of feels... What I do like about the Joy-Cons is it's very gimmicky, but it reminds me of the N64 because of the colors.
Yeah.
You know, like, because it's just like, okay, I want that color, I want that color. I don't like playing with them, so why am I getting the colors? I don't know, because it's cool. But it comes with the Joy-Cons, and I don't think they're very reliable.
Yeah.
I think they break easily. One of my buddies, he accidentally dropped one and it broke, and he had to buy another one. You know, I think they're kind of cheap.
Even if that wasn't an issue, I don't necessarily love the feel of the buttons or the joystick. They feel very small to me.
Yeah, they do. They're very small.
So I prefer to play it docked with what is an amazing Pro controller. And this is the Nintendo branded Pro controller. It's a little expensive, but man, it is worth it.
No, we both have one, and it is so awesome. The battery life lasts a while.
Yep.
The controller feels great. I play with that all the time, and it feels so good. And it's wireless, obviously, so that's even better.
It's one of the best controllers, I think, out there. I think it's right up there with, you know, the Xbox One controller, series controller.
I freaking love it. I think it feels great, and
it's great.
Gets the job done.
So here's a third-party option that I want to throw out there. I don't know a ton. There's a ton of offerings for third-party controllers. But Hori makes this, and I think it's called a Pro Grip. You'd maybe want to look into that a little bit. But when it's on its centerpiece, right, I think it looks goofy. But that's not what it's for. They're basically two Joy-Cons. And when they're on,
hefty, dude.
It feels like you're playing with a Pro controller. Now, it does make it a little goofy to fit into like a travel case or whatever.
Yeah, because they're massive.
But these, they take that handheld experience and they make you feel like you're playing with a Pro controller.
It makes it feel like you're playing with like a legit console on the go. It's so nice. It does kind of suck because we have really small travel bags and they don't fit in them. Yeah. So that kind of sucks. But dude, I would much rather play with those than the Joy-Cons. It just feels so good. It is a little weird when you have it docked and just plugged in. It just feels really
for sure.
Big, but it's really great.
Nintendo also released, because the online component has the NES app, the Super Nintendo app, Genesis app, and N64 app. We don't have the Genesis controllers or the N64, but we do have the NES and Super Nintendo controllers. Form factor is great. I always thought the NES one has a little more of a shallow D-pad than the original controller did. Super Nintendo feels great. The NES ones are goofy because they dock to charge.
Yeah, it's really weird.
As opposed to the Super Nintendo one, you just charge via USB-C. So that's kind of goofy.
I think these controllers, though, are really freaking sweet. Yeah. They're awesome, especially if you grew up playing NES or Super Nintendo. Yep. Very nostalgic. Wireless. I love that we have them.
Yeah.
But do we use them? Not really.
Yeah.
They're kind of just cool.
Yeah.
Kind of just cool to have, and I don't know. I just rather play with the Pro controller.
and to be perfectly honest, and it's probably, I think I would use them more if I didn't have the real shit. Yeah. Right. But if I'm playing Super Nintendo or NES, I'm playing Super Nintendo or NES. I'm not playing it on the Switch.
I barely play the apps. It's cool that we have them. You know, but it's kind of just gimmicky. But it's really cool too.
It is. It's a great offering. I think if somebody wasn't a collector, I think it's a great option. And I do like it for when I'm on the road.
It's awesome.
But like I said, they do offer a Genesis controller, an N64 controller, same type of deal. They just charge, and you can play using those apps using the original feeling controller.
I think there's a Genesis 3 button that was officially released through Nintendo. There is a 6-button controller that was officially released through Nintendo, but it's in Japan only.
Yeah.
So obviously with the internet, you could probably get it.
Yeah, you can import it.
Yeah, you can import it, get the 6-button. Also, Retrobit makes USB Genesis controllers that work with the Switch. I think there's a little bit of finagling you have to figure out, but they still work, and that's pretty cool.
Yep, and we could go on and on and on. I know 8BitDo makes a controller that works with the Switch. There's tons of offerings because of the USB connectivity.
There's so many different types of controllers, third party, first party. These are just the ones that we know and talk about.
Yep.
And we love.
Yeah,
but I would recommend
really
the Pro
good.
controller.
Absolutely.
It's so good.
We already kind of referred to it a little bit with the memory on the consoles. One thing that I think can enhance a gamer's experience with the Switch is, the Pro controller, right? But then adding more memory. 32 gigs out of the box on the original and the Lite. That's not going to do it, folks.
That is not that much space at all.
Like, I think, one or two games can take up 32 gigs. So it does have a spot. I know on the OLED it's under the kickstand where you can add a micro SD card
to increase the size.
I highly, highly, highly recommend doing that. There's just not enough. There are so many Switch games available, physically, digitally. I thousands and thousands and thousands of games. It's crazy how many games are on the Switch, and 32 gigs, 64 gigs. It's just not going to get the job done.
I know most of the games aren't as big as Sony and Microsoft games, and there's a lot of indie games that are really small. But man, if you're a hardcore gamer, you start getting games, you're like, fuck, I'm out of room, dude. That sucks.
Speaking of games, we go through these and kind of, is it worth owning a Switch? Is it fun to collect for the Switch? And games is very, very important. And we've talked about mostly hardware to this point. Now it's time to talk about software. Exclusives for the Switch, I would say for a few years, maybe 3. I kind of beat the Switch up a little bit, maybe even on the channel because of this, because I felt like initially the Switch was riding the Wii U's coattails. It was a lot of re-released games from the Wii U.
It was just, we already have that game on the Wii U, but they're releasing it on the Switch. So then early on when we got our Switch, we didn't want to re-buy games because we had them for the Wii U. So we were like, what's the point? There is a lot of great exclusives now. We're only going to talk about the ones that we have and have played. But first off, dude, one of the first games I bought for the Switch was Mario Odyssey. That game is incredible. I could not stop playing it. It is so good. Metroid Dread.
So those two games in particular, Odyssey and Dread, those were two rabbit hole moments where the channel pretty much shut down.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't stop playing those games.
There's another game that's coming up that's we're playing right now. Stop the channel too. But.
I think... I put it up here, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The reason I put it up here, that was a Wii U game, Mario Kart 8 was. But they have added so much more to Mario Kart since it came over to the Switch with the season pass of the tracks and all that type of stuff.
If you're a member of the booster pack or whatever it's called, you have access to all these extra tracks and characters. And we bought this game again because, dude, we love Mario Kart, and it makes it feel like a new Mario Kart game with all these extra maps and stuff. It's so cool.
The cups that they've added in the tracks, the game is damn near doubled in size.
Yeah, and
it's like it's Irish.
Yeah, dude, I think there's 3 more map packs they're going to release too.
Yeah.
So I think by the end of 2023, those will all be out.
Yeah.
Which is that's so. Every time they release new tracks, I'm like, oh, a new game.
Yeah,
I get excited.
Sure. Luigi's Mansion 3, awesome exclusive. They did a great job with that game. Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom. This is another game where we have stopped doing everything.
Yeah.
We stopped making videos. We've been playing Zelda. I kind of just want to play it right now, but we have to film this. Zelda's so good. Obviously, there was Breath of the Wild, but that was on the Wii U. But this game is incredible.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild's great, and a lot of people think of it as a Switch game. It was co-released on the Switch
which
and
is
the Wii U.
Yeah, it came out at the same time.
So it wasn't exclusive to the Switch, but as great as that is, Tears of the Kingdom to me makes Breath of the Wild feel like a tech demo for Tears of the Kingdom.
Dude, it's so good. And then we've already kind of mentioned it, but Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Yeah.
I think it might be my favorite Smash Bros. Ever just because of how many things it offers, like all the characters, the maps. It's so fun. If you're in a Smash Bros. Ultimate, you gotta have it.
I will say one cool accessory that I think is necessary, because we talked about Mario Kart and Smash, so I gotta bring this up, is one of these USB dongles so that you can play with GameCube controllers.
Yes, this thing is so awesome. It's weird that it's 2 USBs, so it plugs in, but you can plug in 4 regular GameCube controllers into the slot. Oh, it makes it so nice. I love playing Smash and Mario Kart with the GameCube controller.
It's amazing, and we use this all the time.
Yeah, we have it plugged in all the
only
time.
Play Smash with this, with Mario Kart. And they're relatively cheap, and this is the one, we actually picked ours up. This was released for the Wii U. So if you still have the Wii U one laying around, it works on the Switch.
It works. So it's so awesome. Because GameCube controller is one of my freaking favorite controllers.
Yeah,
it's so awesome. Astral Chain is the original. That game was really cool when it came out. That's a game that I would like to revisit because we played it a ton when it came out and then got distracted by other things. And then Bayonetta 3, which the Bayonetta series is phenomenal.
Fairly new release there. There's a ton, guys. We're not going to talk about all the exclusives.
So many.
You got Splatoon 2, Splatoon 3. There's some Kirby games that we haven't played.
Animal Crossing.
Link's Awakening remake.
There's just so many Nintendo games. We're just talking about the ones that we have and have played. So obviously we're going to miss stuff because we can't cover everything. We can't play everything. Pokemon is freaking popular on the Switch. Just haven't played it.
Tons of offerings. The games are there. It's gotten way better than how it kind of limped out of the gate, where I felt like it was, just regurgitating Wii U stuff.
And then obviously those are just first party games. There is a ton of third party games that are available on Switch and then also available, on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X or whatever. So many games.
For sure. And I don't really get into those on the Switch. I don't know what you're thinking on it is, but I opt to get those games typically for the higher powered consoles because the Switch is not a powerhouse by any means. Indie games is a different story.
Yeah, indie games way different story. But if it's a third-party game that's like a heavy hitter and it's offered on the Switch, it's not going to perform as well. Like I know that, and I think people that own the Switch know that as well. The Switch is mostly for first-party Nintendo games because that's what it's designed for. You can obviously play it, but it probably will struggle. There will be like some loading and stuff like that. But I'd rather get on the PS4.
It is miraculous though that the Switch can do what it can do, being as underpowered. I mean, I think it's like right in there, maybe not even as powerful as a PlayStation 3. And what it can pull off, it really speaks to how important games are. Games are so vital. You can have, it's like you can have the nicest car, ever, but if it's a piece of shit and has no applications and it's just whatever, it's not going to be good. It can have the most horsepower and all this. But if it's not fun to drive, who gives a shit?
You can have the most decked out, most powerful system, but if it doesn't have games that can support it, Nintendo's so genius about they don't need the most power to make these beautiful games. Like Tears of the Kingdom, man, that game is beautiful. But there's areas where they don't need it to be powerful because they figured it out. They kind of trick you.
The last time Nintendo had a console that was, I would say, maybe not completely on par. It wasn't the most powerful, but it belonged in the generation it was in, was the GameCube. Dude, ever since then, the Wii was way underpowered. The Wii U was way underpowered.
Nintendo does.
Yeah, the NES was right where it needed to be. Super was right where it needs to be. 64 is arguably the most powerful of the generation. GameCube fit in, and then it's just now it's just about games.
But yeah, Nintendo doesn't worry about that because they worry. I think they spend more time worrying about the games than they do the console, which I think is really cool. Obviously, the Switch has been out for 6 years. Who knows when they're going to announce a new console? There's been rumors and teasing, so there might be a new Nintendo console within the next 5 years or something. I would assume so.
I think we're going to get an announcement at least by the end of this year.
You think? I really the end of this year? Damn, that'd be sick.
Their life cycle. I mean, it's been 6 years. It's getting a little long in the tooth.
But they got 3 variants, So,
I know. We'll see. I think they're going to release something more powerful.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking they're going to release like an Odyssey 2 or something.
Yeah.
I thought they were saving Zelda for the new console, but nope, they dropped it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's neither here nor there. Will there be a new console coming out? Will it be called the Super Nintendo Switch? Ooh, Nintendo, thank you very much. The SNES.
The SNES.
I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, we talked about Wii U games and how that was, as Wii U fans, that was annoying that we had this new Nintendo console and the games just kept being the same. But if you missed the Wii U, this is a bonus for you.
Oh, dude, it's so nice.
And I think that's how most people are. We were pissing and moaning because we're like, God damn it, we already have that game. We want new stuff.
But the Wii U failed, so a lot of people didn't have it.
Exactly.
So a lot of people didn't play the games. There's so many amazing games that if you didn't have a Wii U, or if you did have a Wii U and didn't get to them, they're available on the Switch. And what's cool about a lot of these games is there's like DLC and there's upgrades and there's more to the game than what it was on the Wii U.
Yeah, for
sure.
So
it does offer more. It sucks for us because we're like, we already have it, so we don't want to buy it. It comes with, extra stuff. That's cool, dude. But Breath of the Wild, we already mentioned. Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, Super Mario 3D World. That game is incredible. I'm really excited for the for the new one. New Super Mario Bros. U, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. There's just so many.
Yeah.
Dude, so many games. It's not a remake, but Mario Maker 2, you know, on the Switch.
Yep. I mean, the Wii U is pretty freaking awesome. I just gotta say. So if you missed it, this is a really good chance to play the games.
And what's cool is like Donkey Kong or Mario 3D World comes with Bowser's Fury, like the DLC and all that stuff. So there is more stuff to offer. So if you missed it, now's the time to get into it.
Right, the online component of the Switch. I think there's a lot of value here. And there's basically two versions of the online package that you can get. First and foremost, there are some games that work fine, but Nintendo still hasn't figured out its online interface. Like, if you're wanting to play online gaming, that type of stuff, Splatoon, for whatever reason, they've made that one work fine. But I remember when we got the new Strikers. Remember trying to play that online? It was just janky as hell.
It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But I feel like the online aspect, they were pushing really hard.
Yeah.
But, like, it was hard. We couldn't figure it out.
And the chatting, like, you have to, like, I don't even know how to chat, honestly. I think you have to have, like, an app or something.
Dude, it's so weird. The only game that I've really done a lot of online with is Mario Kart, and we've done it on the channel.
Yeah.
And that's so fun, but still, I don't know how to chat. I don't know how to do anything because we do it over live streaming.
Yeah.
That one makes sense because you create a room and all this stuff, but yeah, playing online, I think I tried doing Smash Bros. One time, and I was really confused.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't, I feel like the user interface for online gaming on the Switch isn't very user-friendly.
It's not.
But I think a lot of their games aren't leaning towards online. Like, they're more first-party or single-player experiences, unlike, PlayStation and Xbox, where they design games to be online.
So kind of, I look at this as their way of having a version of Game Pass, if you will. But it's all based on legacy content. So the initial package is, like, for one user, it's $19.99 a year, which is really freaking cheap.
That's not bad. $20 for a year.
It's what, $1.50 a month, maybe?
That's not bad.
So,
and it's compared to, like, other onlines. Yeah, that's so cheap.
Yeah, and you get access to controlled access, right? You don't get access to the whole library, but the NES, the Super Nintendo, and the Game Boy. I think this is really, really neat. We don't use it very much because look at the wall behind us. Most people don't have this stuff, though, man. If you were just getting in and you just got a Switch, I think you would find a ton of value.
Oh, dude, it's so nice. Yeah, if you don't have any other consoles and you grew up playing the old stuff, super nostalgic, super awesome. It does kind of suck because they just release games here and there, and you don't know what they're releasing. Sometimes they release stuff, and you're like, what the hell is that? I've never heard of that game. But there is some really cool stuff available on the NES and Super Nintendo apps, and the Game Boy apps.
Yeah.
It's just really cool. And if you don't have the console laying around and you get, like, the NES controller, it feels like you're playing it, dude. It's so cool. It's awesome that it offers that.
Yeah, if you're in that retro pocket and you like those three consoles, I would recommend getting either the 8-bit do or the Nintendo-branded Super Nintendo controller, because you can play the NES Game Boy games and Super Nintendo games on that. Where the NES one, I love it. Feels nostalgic, but you're gonna miss those other buttons for Super.
Yeah, you can only use it for NES
and Game Boy.
Yeah,
but yeah, the rest you're gonna miss out. But one thing that I think is pretty cool is the family accounts.
Yes.
And there's two different versions. So we're just talking about the main Switch online, but $34.99 for up to 8 users. Now, that's great for families. That's great for families that have kids off at college, or it can be great if you got a close-knit group of friends.
Yeah, that's what we have. We have a family account. We have like 4 people on it, and it's so nice because we're all 4 different gamers.
Yeah.
And so, like, when we download stuff, we're like, hey, you want to download this? So it's like it's really freaking sweet to have. It's
absolutely.
It's just awesome. And man, divided by 8, dude, that's like super cheap.
Yeah,
That's crazy cheap.
So then, later on in the Switch's life, they did the expansion pack.
Yes, the expansion pack, which is so cool.
I will say I was a little bit disappointed when the expansion pack came out, because I thought this was going to be the conduit to us getting the GameCube on the Switch, and we've already showed the adapter we have. I was going to be so excited for that. Not sure why. I've got like a GameCube collection. I have a modded game, but nonetheless, I just want the GameCube to come to the Switch for whatever reason.
I think Nintendo's spoiling us.
Yeah,
because we have access to all this.
But this expansion pack added consoles. It added the N64, which was a big deal. People were freaking out.
That was a huge deal.
I'm still stunned, even though, again, not a huge deal, but I'm stunned they got the licensing figured out for GoldenEye. Whatever. But I digress. Game Boy Advance, Sega Genesis.
Yeah, dude, it's badass that there is Genesis.
Yes.
That is so cool. So we already mentioned that you can use Genesis controllers.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can play Genesis games with your Genesis controller on your Nintendo console. What the hell?
What is happening?
What the hell is
Dude,
going on?
I shouldn't say when you were a kid. Yeah, because you weren't alive when the Genesis was out. But when I was a kid, Say what?
Yeah, they would just say, "Don't even touch me."
Those are playground fights.
Yeah,
happening.
dude. But that's so awesome.
It is.
As a gamer, that's incredible
Yeah.
that's on there, and it's so cool because I didn't grow up with a Genesis,
Yep.
so now I have access to these games on the Switch, dude. I think that is where the value is for me, at least.
Yeah.
It's so badass.
And then you also get access to a DLC, which you can get otherwise, but you're paying the membership, so I shouldn't say it's free. But you get this, you get all the season booster course pass for Mario Kart 8, and they've done some DLC for certain games. I know Splatoon 2 had it. I believe Splatoon 3 had it. Animal Crossing had it. I'm sure there's going to be some other stuff coming down.
See, that's really cool, you know, because obviously you're paying monthly for it. So,
Yeah.
But it's just really nice if you have a game you forgot about, and then it's like, oh, DLC, hell yeah, go back and revisit that game. I think the expansion pack is worth it if you like having access to all that stuff, and if say you don't have every console hooked up in your game room, it's an incredible value. Access to all those virtual consoles, and then plus DLC, dude, that's incredible.
I wish Nintendo would let you buy full games though. Still,
instead of having to pay monthly. For
yes,
them.
if you don't want to pay monthly, I wish any of the games that were in the passes or the NES apps and things like that, you could still just download a one-off if you wanted to. But I still think this is a great service, and the price is almost double. So for one user, it's $49.99 a year. It's $79.99 for 8 users. So if you got 8 users, that's $10 a person for a year.
That's a year. That's cheaper than that single membership.
Yeah. So
that's not bad. It does kind of suck, you know. I hate subscription services and I hate having to pay monthly for shit.
Yeah.
But it's cheap enough, and you get access to tons of things that I think it is worth it. It's just badass that they offer it, you know.
So 2023, or if you see this video later, and it's after 2023, and you missed out on the Switch. What do you? Is it worth jumping into? What have you thought in your lifetime?
I say absolutely, dude. I love the Switch. I think I play it less than most people. I think a lot of people play their Switch all the time, and I love my Switch, but you know, I like playing it docked, you know. So I only play it at home, really. If I go on vacation though, I always bring it with. Do I play it? No, but I bring it just in case I'm like, oh, I have an hour, let me play some games. It's so nice of the convenience of the travel. You can play it docked. That's so nice. All the games are badass. When I get hooked into a game though, I have to keep playing. Like I was hooked for Lego Star Wars for a while. We're hooked on Zelda right now.
Odyssey, you were nuts.
Yeah, there's so many games that once I get my freaking fingernails into them, I have to beat.
Yeah.
So I say absolutely, dude. It's so badass.
It is. I would agree. It's a really fun console to collect for. I think if you wanted to jump in and collect for something, there are so many physical games. Yeah. This is maybe going to be one of the last consoles, I think, that's highly collectible. We'll see what happens. I don't know what Nintendo's going to do next, but we have got into this space where the digital world is taking over. Physical games on the Switch are still a thing. Now, there are these rumors out there that the DRM memory or whatever that they use, that's way technical terms over my head, is going to go bad at some point. I can't speak to that. Whether it will or won't, I don't know.
I've never experienced that. What is weird, though, about collecting, and, you know, games are still being made for this, is when you buy games on, like, the second or third market, it's a lot of just cartridge only.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to be weird about collecting for this is you don't find the cases. Like, at thrift stores and pawn shops, it's just cartridge only.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think people, you know, put it in their travel case and they just throw the cases away, but that's to me, I like having the cases.
Yeah.
I don't like having loose carts around.
Same thing that happened with the DS
stuff. Yeah, the DS. Yeah. It's so weird. So I think keep your cases if you're going to buy them, because down the line, people are going to be like, I wish I had the cases. I wish I had the cases. It's that's one thing to keep or be aware of if you're going into this.
Yeah.
But you can get Switch games like at the pawn shop near us, $15 a pop for just a loose card. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a loose card, though. So.
And there's been a lot of limited release stuff on the Switch, too. So I think that's going to make collecting for it a little crazy down the line. It's got Nintendo's name on it, so that's going to make it crazy. There's some various console variants that I think is going to be...
There's a lot of console variants.
There are. You know, we have the Splatoon 3 one here. They had a Pokemon one come out. They have, just came out, the Tears of the Kingdom one. There's a Mario one. There's various ones that have came out over the years. I think that's going to add, because that's fun for gamers. Like, it's fun to me that when I'm at your place, you have a different Switch than the one I have.
I know,
and
dude.
We have other friends that...
Oh, the decals on the Joy-Cons, the way like the dock looks, it's just so cool. And like I said earlier, with the Joy-Cons, it just reminds me of like the N64 era, where it has all these fantastic colors. You know, it's just fun.
So I think not only is it a fun console just for the playing aspect, I do think it's going to be highly collectible. I think people will be very, very nostalgic for this system because it's played by such a wide swath of people.
Yeah.
Kids love the Switch. Adults love the Switch. One thing that I think is so cool is how that has happened like it did with the Wii, where tons of non-gamers, I'm running into people that are playing Tears of the Kingdom that I don't think have played a video game in 10 years.
Yeah, but they got it. They went and bought a Switch just so they could play the new Zelda.
Yeah.
Like, that's so cool. I know so many people that aren't gamers that the only console they have is the Switch.
Well, and I think the offering for those people is so unique and it's so cool that you can buy one Nintendo console and have access to so much variety, whether it be indie titles, whether it be Nintendo classics from yesteryear, new third-party stuff, new Nintendo first-party titles. The list goes on and on.
It is so. Nintendo's so good at making it so it's a console for everyone.
Yeah.
Kids love it. Adults love it. Hardcore gamers love it. Casual gamers love it. It's just such an awesome, diverse console that offers. If you're like a different type of gamer, it offers that. If you're like our type of, it's so awesome that it just has all this available and it's user friendly. Like, that's a big deal. Pop a game in, it plays easy peasy.
I love the Switch. Last note I will have though. These things are dog shit. I do not like the Joy-Cons, but other than that, I do love the console. And I used to think it was riding the Wii U's coattails, but I've kind of came off that opinion because they do have a lot of stuff that they've released on their own right.
They do. One thing I want to bring up real quick is, this does have freaking gyro in it, so there are some games that use like motion, if you will. Just be wary of that because it doesn't quite work. Like House of the Dead.
Yeah. You can get by with it, but it's not.
Don't get your hopes up. It's not like a Wii motion bar, because that's one thing that people are like, oh, it does have, kind of.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work all the time. Just be aware of that.
So resounding yes, I would say. If you're looking into getting a Switch, I think you definitely should. If you already have one, maybe we showed something today that you're like, holy shit, I need that GameCube adapter, or I need that Hori Pro grip for my Switch when I'm playing on the go. Hopefully we provided some value.
And there's so many new games coming out this year. Dude, I'm so excited.
I'm pumped. New Mario's coming down the line.
It's going to be so fun.
We appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe to the channel. Get out of here and go play your Nintendo Switch. See you next time, folks. You sick human being. If you made it this far,
wow,
3+ hours of content, I think.
Yeah, about 3 hours, which is insane.
It's just been insane going back through this old footage, watching our yelling at the camera, watching us figure out our production, the whole 9 yards. But like I said, at the front side of this thing, for whatever reason, these videos have just continued to grow and support our channel. And at the time that we started filming these, we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
We still don't know what we're doing, but we do know that these do well. So thank you guys for watching the almost 3-hour video, or about 3-hour video of the home console buying guides for the Nintendo.
Yeah.
I think we're going to do something similar for Sega, PlayStation, and maybe the light guns.
And you know
who
what?
knows?
There's still some buying guides that we have never covered.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind is like the Sega CD.
Sega Saturn.
Sega Saturn's out there. So there could be more coming down the pipe, but nonetheless, if you're new, we appreciate you. If you've been here since July of 2020 when we started doing these buying guides, we just love you and hope that you found value in having all these in one place. What a fun trip down memory lane. We'll catch you guys on the next episode of the one and only Gaming Off the Grid.